Welcome to Lore for Sleep. I'm your host, Laura. Please, make yourself comfortable and let the lore of the multiverse take you away. This is Dark, the highly acclaimed and enigmatic German science fiction TV series. In the town of Winden, time, that ever-present companion, conceals secrets as profound as the universe itself. We've long believed in the steady march of time, an unbroken thread extending into the infinite. But what if I were to tell you that the boundaries between past, present, and future are mere illusions? These are the philosophical musings of the clockmaker, an enigmatic figure whose theories challenge our understanding of time itself. They argue that the past, the present, and the future are not neatly separated chapters but interconnected in an unending loop. A circle of existence where everything is bound by invisible threads. During this moment of revelation, our camera navigates an intriguing scene, a hidden chamber beneath Winden. Within, an organizational board takes center stage. On it, the faces of the town's prominent residents are captured in photographs, a complex web of connections marked by strings, each thread tracing familial bonds and more. This is no ordinary board. It represents a radical theory that time is static. In this view, all moments exist simultaneously, like pieces on a cosmic chessboard. If one possesses the knowledge and means, they can leap across this temporal chessboard, hopping from one part of the timeline to another. But what does this mean for change? Can we rewrite the past? Can we reshape the future? June 21, 2019. Now, as the summer sun paints the world in hues of gold, we are drawn to the life of Michael Kahnwald, an artist with a heavy heart. In a poignant act, he seals a letter within an envelope and leaves it on his workspace, a cryptic message etched on its front: "Do not open before November 4, 10:13 p.m. Michael then proceeds to hang himself. The camera's lens lingers on a family portrait, capturing Michael, his wife Hannah, his mother Ines, and their teenage son Jonas. This frozen moment in time, a snapshot of their past, will become intertwined with the secrets of Winden's uncharted history. And as if awakened from a haunting dream, Jonas himself emerges from slumber, haunted by the shadows of the night. He reaches for medication, his actions shrouded in a sense of foreboding. In this town where time is not what it seems, an enigma looms, ready to unravel its mysteries in the most unexpected ways. On a chilly November morning in 2019, young Jonas woke up to a double whammy of misfortune. The power was out, rendering the fridge contents inedible. Jonas, with a sigh of frustration, alerted his mother, Hannah, who was preoccupied with Ulrich Nielsen, a married police officer. They exchanged affectionate words and secret glances, making plans for a school meeting later. Jonas, oblivious to the complex web of adult relationships, embarked on a bike ride through the wooded paths of his small town. As he pedaled past the town's nuclear power plant, a missing child poster caught his eye, displaying the face of Erika Bendorf, a red-haired teenager who had disappeared. Meanwhile, Ulrich jogged through the foreboding woods near the Winden caves. His proximity to these mysterious caves raised questions about what lay within their depths. Jonas, still struggling with his father's recent death, met with his therapist, Peter Doppler, for a walk in the woods. Their conversation revealed Jonas' recent stay at a mental health facility and his ongoing struggle to come to terms with his father's sudden departure. Ines, Michael's mother and Jonas' grandmother, held a letter from Michael, Jonas' late father. Tonight was the night the letter could be opened, hinting at some long-buried family secret. As evening fell, the local radio broadcast the impending decommissioning of the Winden nuclear power plant, a historical institution in the town. The news had a weighty significance that seemed to hang in the air. Ulrich returned home, where his wife, Katerina, dealt with their 3 children. Family life was a mix of humorous quirks and complex dynamics, with their youngest, Mikkel, displaying a flair for magic. After his therapy session, Jonas attended school, feeling out of place and under the watchful eyes of his peers. His best friend, Bartos, tried to shield him from prying questions but inadvertently revealed a cover story about Jonas' supposed stay in France. At the police station, Ulrich faced Erich Obendorf's distraught parents, who demanded answers about their missing son. The police had been tirelessly searching for Erich without success, leaving his parents desperate for information. A mysterious figure emerged from the caves, shrouded in a hooded coat, their face concealed. Meanwhile, teenage romance and secrets unfolded among the high school students, including Jonas, Martha, Bartos, and Franziska. Martha's public display of affection with Bartos stunned Jonas, revealing the complexities of youthful emotions. At an assembly, Katerina addressed the entire high school, urging students to come forward with any information about Erich's disappearance. Jonas couldn't shake his discomfort, his world seemingly unraveling in the wake of hidden family mysteries and teenage heartache. Ulrich and Charlotte, local investigators, are puzzled by the case as they've found no leads to Erich's whereabouts. He left behind his phone and a significant amount of cash in his bedroom, making it unlikely that he ran away. Ulrich, however, still insists that running away might be the explanation, as he believes bad things don't happen in Vinden. Sometimes, he argues, people just need to escape, regardless of what they leave behind. Charlotte, on the other hand, reminds Ulrich that Vinden has a history of similar occurrences, and this situation may not be as simple as it seems. Ulrich becomes cold and walks away from her, emphasizing that Erich's disappearance has nothing to do with what happened to his brother. Meanwhile, Ulrich's mother, Jana, calls the police emergency line repeatedly, and Charlotte suggests that Ulrich should visit her. Ulrich reflects on how his life has taken a wrong turn, becoming the opposite of what he had wanted it to be. Regina Tiedman, who owns the struggling Forest Hotel, deals with financial pressure from her bank. She blames her hotel's woes on Erich's disappearance, although it seems her problems began long before his vanishing. Frustrated with the bank's demands, she vents her anger on a phone call. In a science class, Franziska gives a presentation on black holes, while Bartos makes crude jokes about her. Bartos then unveils a plan. Erich was a drug dealer who operated in Vinden Cave, and he believes Erich was murdered in a drug deal. Bartos suggests that if Erich's stash is still in the cave, they could find it and become the new drug dealers. Ulrich visits his estranged mother, Jana, who shares a disturbing sighting she had in the woods, mentioning a dark figure with a giant head. She believes that events from 33 years ago are repeating themselves, comparing Erich's disappearance to the disappearance of Ulrich's brother, Mads. Ulrich seems skeptical rather than convinced. At the Vinden rest home, Helga Doppler repeats the phrase, "It's going to happen again," hinting at a mysterious and foreboding recurrence of events. Meanwhile, Erich Obendorf is revealed to be alive but imprisoned in a strange room with a torture device-like chair, watching an old music video. The local teenagers discuss their plan to search for Erich's drug stash in the Vinden Cave, fueling their expedition with conspiracy theories, including rumors of mutated squirrels due to radiation from the nearby nuclear power plant. Ulrich calls Hannah, trying to convince her to attend a school meeting. He also suggests a meeting in Frankfurt, hinting at a possible affair. However, Katerina, Ulrich's wife, finds a strand of long brown hair on his hoodie, causing suspicion. Hannah, a massage therapist, meets with Alexander Tiedman, the director of the local power plant, where they discuss the plant's impending closure. Alexander expresses condolences for the death of Hannah's husband, Michael, and asks about their well-being. Ines, who has been keeping Michael's suicide note, listens to a voicemail from Hannah, questioning her absence and her lack of visits to her grandson, Jonas. Ines is hesitant to open the suicide note, as she believes she must wait until a specific time. Hannah attends the school meeting. To her surprise, the first person she encounters is Katerina, the wife of the man she's cheating with. Despite their complex relationship, Katerina warmly greets Hannah, demonstrating genuine interest in her well-being. She even promises to join her in the meeting. It's clear that Katerina considers them good friends, both struggling with the challenges of being working mothers. Meanwhile, Jonas, another key character, lies on his bed, lost in thought. He eventually rides his bike to a cave near the woods, where he meets Martha. She shares her story about how she ended up with Bartos, but Jonas interrupts her, revealing that he received texts from her last summer that were never sent, something that felt wrong. Their conversation takes an eerie turn when Martha experiences déjà vu, leading them to joke about it being a glitch in the Matrix or a message from the other side. Bartos, Magnus, and Mikkel arrive, with Magnus babysitting Mikkel due to the absence of their usual babysitter. They embark on a journey along abandoned railroad tracks toward the cave. Elsewhere in the town, Helga Doppler, Charlotte's father-in-law, walks down the road, chanting ominous words, suggesting that something is about to happen again. At the school meeting, Charlotte Doppler, the police chief, discusses the case of Eric, a missing boy who has been gone for 14 days. Frustration and concern are evident as there are no leads or new evidence. Charlotte appeals to the parents to report any information their children may have about Eric's whereabouts. The meeting takes an unexpected turn when Katerina introduces new security measures for the school, intending to protect the children. Regina, a hotel owner affected by the case, believes the situation is being blown out of proportion and wants to restore a sense of normalcy to boost her business. A heated argument ensues, reflecting the tension in the town. Hannah receives a text from Ulrich, instructing her to meet him outside. She seizes the opportunity to leave the tumultuous meeting. Back with the teenagers, Mikkel wonders what the older kids think happened to Eric. The group discusses various theories, with some suggesting he ran away, while others speculate darker scenarios. Martha reassures Mikkel that no one will die or go unfound and urges a change of subject. In the midst of the chaotic school meeting, personal attacks and confrontations intensify. Helga mysteriously interrupts, repeating his foreboding chant. When asked about it, Katerina is left puzzled. Charlotte takes Helga out of the meeting, leaving the rest of the attendees in suspense. The teenagers venture into a dark cave. Mikkel, who yearns for the thrill of discussing ominous topics, grows restless and suggests they turn back. However, the older boys insist they're almost at their destination. Meanwhile, Jonas is captivated by the power plant's looming cooling towers. Outside, Hannah indulges in a cigarette in the same spot where Magnus had earlier smoked a joint. Ulrich, concealed by his hood, finds her, and they share a passionate moment reminiscent of their teenage years. Ines, who has anxiously watched the clock all night, finally reaches 10:13 and opens a letter that leaves her stunned. As the kids reach the cave's entrance, Bartos scours an old armchair for Eric's hidden drug stash, but it's missing. Franziska emerges from the cave, holding the drugs, offering to sell them to Bartos at a steep discount. In his determination to claim the drugs, Bartos shoves her to the ground and takes them. This act reveals a darker side of Bartos, who previously lied to Martha to win her over. The group is shocked by Bartos's aggression, but before they can react, a sudden commotion erupts inside the cave, accompanied by flashing lights and a blackout of their flashlights. In a panic, everyone flees, with no thought for Mikkel's well-being. Mikkel has been sticking close to Jonas, and as they are the last to leave the cave's entrance, Jonas grabs Mikkel's hand and runs. However, in the chaos, Jonas stumbles and falls. When his flashlight flickers back on, he discovers that Mikkel has mysteriously vanished. In the dark and rainy woods, Jonas desperately calls out for his missing friend, Mikkel. His voice echoes, but there's no sign of Mikkel. Suddenly, he hears someone whisper his name twice, and when he turns, he's shocked to see his father, Michael, standing nearby with blood streaming down his face. Terrified, Jonas flees. The group of kids, including Jonas, make their way back to the street, realizing that Mikkel is nowhere to be found. As they return to the woods, the rain begins to pour, revealing that the earlier noise and light were from thunder and lightning. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Helga, leaving the school, get caught in the rain. Helga looks up and utters, "It's too late. We're too late to stop it." Just then, the parents of the children in the woods receive text alerts, informing them that Mikkel has gone missing. Ines, Jonas' grandmother, has been reading a letter during these events, switching between shock and tears. She gently places the letter back in its box, curls over it, and weeps. The police and parents converge on the street next to the woods, waiting for the kids to return. All the children, except Jonas, rush to their parents. Jonas, who has now faced a second major loss in a short span of time, stands there numb, unsure if his mother will even show up. Hannah, Jonas' mother, puts on a facade, running to him and hugging him tightly. Although he eventually embraces her back, his gaze remains fixed straight ahead, lost in his thoughts. Ulrich, Mikkel's older brother, heads into the woods, desperately searching for his missing sibling. He explores the cave, but Mikkel is nowhere to be found. The next morning, sleep eludes everyone. The police continue their investigation at the cave entrance, yet no evidence has surfaced. Ulrich sits alone in his car, parked on the street, haunted by the disappearance of his younger brother. Charlotte, who is supervising an investigation on site, receives a call from her husband, Peter, a therapist, who appears anxious. In an impatient moment, she abruptly ends the call before Peter can articulate his message. Peter, shaken, recites the Serenity Prayer to regain composure. Meanwhile, the police meticulously search the woods, ensuring they don't overlook any evidence. Their efforts lead them to a child's body partially concealed by dirt and leaves. Charlotte assumes it's Mikkel, but she refrains from touching the body, waiting for Ulrich, the boy's father, to identify him. To everyone's shock, the child isn't Mikkel. He's wearing bright sneakers and jeans, unlike Mikkel's skeleton costume from that day. The child's face around his eyes is severely burned, raising questions about his identity. In a different, ominous setting, Eric Obendorf is confined to a torture chair, his mouth gagged and a menacing metal device near his eyes. The mystery deepens as the story unfolds, leaving readers with haunting questions: who is the burned boy, and what is happening to Eric Obendorf? Episode 2. In the second episode of Dark, titled Lies, the mystery and tension continue to build in the small town of Vinden. 9 hours have passed since Mikkel's disappearance, and despite extensive search efforts, there's no sign of him. A mysterious hooded man who emerged from the cave in the previous episode observes the search parties, carrying a suitcase and a backpack. He stumbles upon a dead bird, piquing his interest. Jonas is plagued by recurring dreams, one of which involves his father, Michael, whose reflection in a mirror is disturbingly covered in blood or some unknown dark substance. Jonas experienced a similar dream during therapy with Peter near the cave. The episode takes a dark turn as the medical examiner examines the body of a young boy found dead, discovering strange burn marks on the child's face and ears. The autopsy reveals severe damage to the inner ear, suggesting exposure to intense sound or rapid rotational force. Ulrich searches the Vinden cave, but his efforts lead him to a sealed tunnel with a metal door marked with the power plant's radiation symbol. Despite pounding on the door and calling for Mikkel, there is no response. Meanwhile, Magnus confronts Franziska regarding her presence in the woods the night of Mikkel's disappearance. Filled with guilt and anger, he presses her for answers. Franziska admits that she overheard a conversation about drugs, but she deeply regrets her actions and expresses sympathy for Mikkel's situation. In a poignant moment, Peter Doppler listens to a radio report about Mikkel and Eric and breaks down in tears, hinting at a hidden connection to the unfolding events. Jana, Ulrich's mother, tries to reach out to Ulrich while Tronti, Ulrich's father, secretly washes a bloodstained sweater. Tronti makes unconvincing excuses for his whereabouts, suggesting he may be hiding something from his family. In the small town of Vinden, mysterious events are unfolding. Jana, still haunted by her son Mad's disappearance years ago, confides in Tronti about the striking similarities between Mad's and Mikkel's disappearances. Tronti, however, remains silent and leaves her house without responding. Martha, curious about the past, asks her mother, Katerina, about the age of her uncle Mads when he vanished. Katerina explains that Ulrich was 15, and Mads was 12 when he disappeared. Martha recalls a conversation among the kids in the woods where Mikkel expressed his fear of being lost and never found. Katerina tries to reassure her daughter that Mikkel will come back. Meanwhile, Bartos tries to reach Martha via phone but leaves only a brief message when she doesn't answer. At the local police station, Charlotte informs her colleagues about the discovery of a boy's body, dressed in 1980s clothing and carrying a Walkman. The strange part is that there was red soil on his clothes, but none where he was found. He had a 1 pfennig coin from 1986 around his neck, attached to a red cord. They decide to keep this information confidential while they continue the search for both Mikkel and Eric. They also plan to contact the missing persons office to identify the unknown boy. Ulrich rushes into the police station, excitedly informing Charlotte about a door he found in the cave. He believes it's connected to the disappearances of Mikkel and the other two boys. He's determined to obtain a search warrant for the nearby power plant, convinced it's somehow involved. Charlotte acknowledges the difficulty of securing a warrant for a high-security area but promises to try. At the power plant, Alexander Tiedemann, the plant's head, instructs Jürgen Obendorf, Eric's father, to eliminate any evidence before the police arrive. Jürgen suggests involving someone else, fearing police surveillance due to Eric's connection. Alexander warns him against blackmail and insists that Jürgen take care of the matter that very night. A hooded stranger enters Regina's hotel, seeking a room. Jonas, facing a power outage at his home, heads to his father Michael's art studio with a flashlight to search for clues. During the search party for Mikkel, a compassionate woman tries to console Tronti, who remains skeptical about Mikkel's chances of being found. Jana visits her son Mad's grave and replaces an action figure atop the gravestone in what appears to be a regular ritual. At the cave's entrance, another mysterious man, wearing a raincoat and hood, makes an appearance. The hooded stranger at Regina's hotel unpacks his belongings, revealing an intricate organizational board and scars on his body. He has a red scar on his neck and a device with gears, suggesting a connection to time travel, as evidenced by the book A Journey Through Time. Charlotte contacts Ulrich to inform him that their search warrant was blocked by Alexander, but they're planning to appeal it with a judge. Ulrich, however, quickly rejects a call from Hannah, possibly reflecting the complicated dynamics in his personal life. On a rainy sidewalk, Katerina anxiously awaits the return of her son, Mikkel, who vanished under mysterious circumstances. Instead, Magnus arrives home, consumed by frustration, and takes out his anger on soundproofing insulation, causing his hands to bleed. Meanwhile, Martha, from her window, refuses to answer Bartos's calls, hinting at her emotional distance from him. Jonas, in his father's studio, contemplates existential questions about life and death. His search for answers leads him to discover a hidden compartment in the ceiling, revealing a meticulously crafted map of the Vinden area. Jonas embarks on the quest to decipher its enigmatic landmarks. Eric Obendorf, who has experienced inexplicable torture in a room with a 1950s decor, is subjected to an eerie children's science show discussing black holes. This ominous dialogue raises questions about the bending of time and space. Eric is about to learn how far someone is willing to go in the face of mysterious forces. Ulrich, driven by desperation to find his missing son, arrives at the power plant gates. He encounters armed guards and confronts Alexander personally, pleading to search the power plant's caves and surrounding area. However, Alexander, a formidable and seemingly unyielding figure in the town, dismisses Ulrich's appeals, emphasizing the high-security nature of the power plant. Ulrich's emotional outburst goes unanswered, leaving him to question Alexander's motives and power. As tensions rise, Bartos, who appears to have a sinister side, investigates Eric's bag of drugs and discovers a hidden cell phone but is unable to unlock it. Meanwhile, Hannah, attempting to provide comfort to Ulrich during these trying times, tries to initiate a romantic encounter. Ulrich's response, "I'll call you," hints at his disinterest, a clear indication that he is focused on his family amidst the search for his missing son. Jonas brings a map to his room and discovers a note that reads, "Where is the crossing?" Meanwhile, Ulrich is investigating the disappearances of 2 boys and the evidence found with the 3rd boy's body. He realizes that some tire tracks near the scene belong to a van and recalls that Jürgen, who works at the power plant, drives a van. Jürgen was also present the night Eric, his own son, disappeared. Ulrich drives to Jürgen's house and finds a trapdoor in one of the buildings. Inside, he discovers a stash of drugs, revealing that Jürgen and Eric were involved in the drug business. Ulrich questions Jürgen about his presence at the power plant during Mikkel's disappearance but doesn't get any useful information. Ulrich gives up and leaves Jürgen, who doesn't know Eric's whereabouts. In a parallel story, a second man in a raincoat drags Eric's burned body through the woods, and on the other side, Alexander supervises activities at the power plant. As Jonas and Hannah talk by flashlight due to a power outage, Jonas wonders if Mikkel will be found and if Michael had secrets. Hannah admits she misses the idea of Michael more than the reality. They discuss whether we ever truly know people. Late at night, Tronte sneaks out of bed without realizing that Jana is awake. Ulrich returns home, defeated, and finds Katarina in Mikkel's room. She wants him to promise to tell her the truth about Mikkel and the case, even if it hurts. The cave becomes active, causing chaos in the town, with dead birds and flickering lights. Charlotte finds many dead birds outside the police station. The stranger in the hotel room alters an article headline about Mikkel from "Where is Mikkel?" to "When is Mikkel?" At dawn, Mikkel escapes from the cave and returns home, but everything seems odd. His key doesn't work, and teenage Ulrich and Katarina treat him as an intruder, calling him the Grim Reaper. Mikkel is left standing in front of his house and realizes the date is November 5, 1986. In the 3rd episode, the story picks up right where the 2nd episode left off, following the intriguing time travel mystery in the small town of Vinden. Mikkel, a boy from 2019 who has traveled back to 1986, arrives at his family home. To his dismay, his teenage parents and present-day siblings don't recognize him. As they carelessly leave the door ajar, Mikkel ventures inside, feeling both connected and estranged from the house that should be his, but isn't. He stumbles upon his grandmother, Jana, who is Ulrich's mother. In a poignant moment, they each mistake the other for their lost family members. Jana hopes Mikkel is her son Mads, while Mikkel yearns for her to be his mother. Overwhelmed by emotions, Jana desperately asks Mikkel for any news about Mads, frightening the boy, who quickly flees the house. Meanwhile, Ines Canwald, a nurse at the community hospital, takes on extra shifts due to her lack of family obligations. She's a patient and good-natured woman who doesn't mind the additional workload. Young Charlotte Doppler, on her way to school, discovers a dead bird on the road and decides to collect it for examination later. Sheriff Egon Tiedman starts his day with a perplexing phone call reporting the sudden death of 33 healthy sheep on a local farm. There were no prior signs or obvious reasons for their demise. The farmer, Herman Albers, quotes a passage from the Gospel of Mark, hinting at an unsettling sense of foreboding. Egon is surprised to learn that Albers has become more religious due to the influence of a new priest in the parish. Egon's daughter, Claudia, practices an inspirational speech while driving to work. She takes a moment to criticize her daughter, Regina, for her lack of grooming, ambition, and character. Claudia is determined to make the most of her groundbreaking new position as the first woman in her role and warns Regina not to jeopardize this opportunity. In this part of the story, Mikkel, who has mysteriously traveled back in time to 1986, embarks on a quest to find his family. He heads to the local school, where he believes his mother is the principal in the present day. However, when he approaches the school, he encounters a teenage Katerina, who rudely mocks him and insists that the principal is a man, clearly not his mother. On the other hand, Hannah, who is with Katerina, shows a bit more kindness towards Mikkel. It's evident that Katerina and Hannah aren't very close friends. Meanwhile, Claudia, who has taken on the role of the new director at the power plant, is warmly greeted by Helga, an employee. Helga congratulates her and offers a book as a gift on her new position. However, Claudia is in a hurry to start her job and cuts their conversation short. Inside the power plant, Claudia is met by her secretary, Jasmine Truen, who is excited to have a female boss. Jasmine informs Claudia that a reporter named Tronti Nielsen is there to interview her and hands her a thick binder containing the last 2 years of financial records for the power plant. She mentions that it was challenging to obtain the financial figures. Mikkel, still determined to find his parents, goes to the police station but encounters Egon, the town's sheriff. Egon strongly dislikes Ulrich, Mikkel's older brother, and assumes that Mikkel is playing a prank by pretending to be Ulrich's son. Mikkel asks Egon to confirm the date as November 5, 1986, and Egon notices that Mikkel is injured. Thinking that Ulrich forced Mikkel into a prank, Egon calls the hospital for medical assistance and leaves Mikkel alone in his office to find Ulrich. Claudia meets Tronti, the father of Ulrich and Mads, who has used the interview as an excuse to see her. Tronti claims that people are interested in the new female director of the power plant. Claudia, irritated by his tactics, insists he make an appointment with her secretary. Tronti attempts to emotionally manipulate Claudia by mentioning his wife's grief over their missing son. He stands in her way, touches her hand, and expresses his longing for her. Claudia, frustrated, reluctantly agrees to meet him later to avoid a scene that could harm her professional reputation. Tronti's behavior is manipulative and coercive, putting Claudia in a difficult position. Mikkel, while waiting in Egon's office, takes the opportunity to examine some documents, including a missing persons report about Mads' disappearance. Ines, a nurse, finally arrives to tend to Mikkel, introducing herself gently and offering him kindness, becoming the first person in 1986 to show him compassion. As the story unfolds, Mikkel faces the challenges of adapting to a new time period and dealing with the emotional toll of being separated from his family. Despite his resilience, he is physically and emotionally exhausted, making Ines' kindness and care a crucial lifeline for him in this strange and unsettling journey. Claudia, the new director of the power plant, confronts Bernd Doppler, who is not only the outgoing director but also the founder of the power plant, Helga's father, and Peter's grandfather. She's determined to understand why the true financial records she's uncovered differ significantly from the publicly reported figures. Bernd's response is cryptic, hinting that sometimes ignorance is bliss. He elaborates on how public trust in nuclear energy has waned after the Chernobyl disaster, instilling fear of progress. Nevertheless, the entire town's survival depends on the power plant, and it's now Claudia's duty to keep it operational, even if it means resorting to unconventional means. The unspoken by any means necessary lingers in the air as Claudia accepts the weight of this responsibility and commits to understanding the financial figures thoroughly. While Claudia wrestles with the secrets of the power plant, teenage Charlotte carefully studies the dead bird she discovered, meticulously documenting her findings. In parallel, the town's sheriff, Egon, watches closely as the medical examiner conducts an autopsy on one of the deceased sheep, hoping for any evidence that might implicate Ulrich. However, nothing fits the bill, and the most likely cause of death appears to be a collective heart attack, perhaps triggered by group fright, resulting in all the sheep collapsing. What's particularly eerie is that the sheep's eardrums are ruptured, mirroring the condition of the unidentified boy found in 2019. Claudia's quest for answers takes a surreal turn as Bernd introduces her to a fenced and gated gorge deep in the woods. Bernd alludes to a vast unknown, and Claudia lowers herself into the depths using a rope and a flashlight, discovering stacks of steel barrels marked with a radiation symbol. The nature of their contents remains shrouded in mystery. Are these barrels filled with spent nuclear fuel rods or something even more inexplicable that has traversed through time via the cave? Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ines attempts to connect with Mikkel, but he finally admits to her that he's come from the future. However, Ines assumes it's merely an imaginative story given that she had earlier given him a Captain Future comic book. Back in Vinden, Regina returns home from school to a message on the answering machine, informing her that Claudia won't be home for dinner. Regina's reaction is unsettling as she reveals scars on her arm, hinting at a troubled past. As night falls, Egon embarks on an investigation in a farmer's field, only to be met with a strange phenomenon, a loud boom like thunder followed by a shower of dead birds from the sky. The flashlight and car headlights flicker on and off, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The flickering lights extend throughout the town, including at Charlotte's house, where she places her bird sample in the family's chest freezer. Mikkel, who has been waiting for an opportunity to time travel back home, seizes the moment as the lights flicker at the hospital and rushes to the window in his room. It becomes evident that the entire town's electrical grid is affected, raising questions about the impending chaos. Meanwhile, Ulrich and Hannah, who find themselves at a bus stop with flickering streetlights, ponder if these anomalies are harbingers of the apocalypse, leading Ulrich to express his wish for a world without Vinden. Hannah goes along with his sentiment. Mikkel races towards the cave, using Egon's lighter to guide him into the unknown. As the episode unfolds, a haunting montage set to Agnes Obel's familiar showcases the characters side by side in both 1986 and 2019, underlining their growing awareness that the events of 1986 are eerily repeating themselves, just as Helga Doppler predicted. The intricate web of mysteries in Vinden continues to captivate, leaving viewers in suspense as they attempt to unravel the enigmatic forces at play in this small, seemingly cursed town. As we venture further into this intricate tale, the mysteries of Vinden continue to unfold in both 1986 and 2019. In 1986, Ines is in for a shock as she discovers that Mikkel has managed to escape from his hospital room through the window. In 2019, she gazes at the wooden box that holds her son Michael's letter, hinting at her emotional connection to the past. In 1986, Tronte patiently waits by his car at a bus stop for Claudia, while in 2019, he leans against a wall with an air of anticipation. Claudia, still in 1986, sits alone in her car in the darkness. She notices a book that Helga gave her earlier and unwraps it. It's A Journey Through Time by H.G. Tannhaus, the same book found in the stranger's room at Regina's hotel in 2019. Regina, in both 1986 and 2019, gazes at herself in the mirror. In 1986, she wears lipstick, possibly seeking self-assurance and motivation. In 2019, she examines herself without makeup, performing a breast self-exam, driven by concerns about cancer. Her reasons to live have evolved over the years. Both Charlottes are engrossed in studying the dead birds. In 1986, Charlotte sits on a chest freezer, completing her notes, marking the date as the 11th of May 1986. In 2019, she leaves the police station and stumbles upon the dead birds scattered across the town, carefully picking one up for further examination. Two Jannas, one in 1986 and the other in 2019, lie awake in bed. In 1986, Janna frets about Tronte, her worries etched across her face. In 2019, she appears stone-faced, suggesting a hardened demeanor over the years. In 1986, Tronte returns home and goes to bed, while in 2019, the other side of the bed remains empty, highlighting the loneliness that plagues him. Both Ulriches, young and adult, peer into the bedroom of a missing boy, overwhelmed by worry. Young Ulrich reflects on Mads, his missing brother, while adult Ulrich stands at the doorway, observing a sleeping Katerina in Mikkel's bed. Driven by an urge to take action, Ulrich journeys to the caves. Armed with a crowbar, he attempts to pry open the locked metal door leading to the power plant. Meanwhile, Mikkel meanders through the caves, but his journey doesn't result in time travel or a path back home. He stumbles, sliding down a steep hill and injuring his leg in the process. As he sits there in pain, he can hear the sounds of Ulrich's attempts to open the metal door. Mikkel calls for help, and Ulrich hears him, but they struggle to locate each other. In their anguish over what they've lost, they eventually give up and return to the cave's entrance, knowing that their reunion was agonizingly close yet out of reach. In a room adorned with clocks, the clockmaker H.G. Tannhaus, the author of A Journey Through Time, finishes repairing a device that resembles the one in the stranger's 2019 hotel room. The intricate connections between characters and timelines deepen, leaving us eager to uncover the secrets that bind them in this captivating and enigmatic tale. Episode 4. The clockmaker's voiceover sets an eerie tone by pondering the mysteries of black holes, suggesting that everything, even the past, might be influenced by the future. As it speaks, the camera takes us on a rapid journey through various intriguing images: a cabin door, an ominous chair, pine cone crafts, mysterious symbols, a missing child, the stranger's determined face, and more. Some of these images are familiar, while others are new. After a haunting theme song, we shift to the Doppler household, where tensions are running high. Franziska accuses her sister Elizabeth of stealing her lipstick, but Elizabeth vehemently denies it, arguing that she's too young for makeup. Their parents, Peter and Charlotte, intervene and arrange a carpool for the day. Franziska storms off in frustration, believing Elizabeth is hiding something. Charlotte decides to drive Elizabeth to school, and when asked if it's related to Mikkel, she confirms that it is but doesn't elaborate. Meanwhile, Jonas prepares for school despite his mother, Hannah, suggesting they spend time together instead. On his way to school, Peter visits an agitated Helga, who is repeating phrases like "it has to stop" and "TikTok," hinting at his inner turmoil. On her way to school, Charlotte listens to the radio news, which reports on Eric and Mikkel's disappearance, along with repeated blackouts in the region. The utility company promises to fix the issue. Charlotte stops near where a dead boy's body was found, and she takes an SD chip from a wildlife conservation camera to gather evidence. Her daughter Elizabeth accuses her of stealing, but Charlotte argues it's not theft when a police officer is looking for evidence. Meanwhile, Jonas goes to a cave and enters using a map. The stranger observes him from a distance. Jonas searches the tunnels and discovers a narrow tunnel marked on the map. After dropping off Elizabeth at school, Charlotte leaves her with her new boyfriend, Yashin, promising to pick her up later. Magnus interrupts Franziska's math class and follows her to the bathroom. Charlotte has the medical examiner conduct an autopsy on a dead songbird with unusual white feathers. She recalls a similar incident 33 years ago and senses a connection between the dead birds and missing children but can't determine how they're related. At the police station, Officer Torben Waller informs Charlotte that the press has been alerted about the dead boy's body, causing a commotion. Charlotte doesn't have instructions on how to handle this. She also asks about Ulrich, who hasn't arrived yet, and instructs Torben to expand the database search for matches to the dead boy dating back at least 15 years. Torben reveals that the red soil on the dead boy's shoes doesn't match the area where he was found, indicating it matches the crime scene. As Charlotte drives her daughter Elizabeth to school, they listen to the radio news. The announcer reports on Eric and Mikkel's disappearances, two puzzling incidents that have shaken the town. He also mentions recent blackouts in the region, with the utility company promising to fix the issue. During their drive, Charlotte pulls over near the spot where a dead boy's body was found. She takes the SD chip from a wildlife conservation camera that might hold crucial evidence. Elizabeth accuses her of stealing, but Charlotte insists that when a police officer gathers evidence, it's not considered theft. Elizabeth remains unconvinced. Meanwhile, Jonas ventures to a cave, using a portion of a map. The stranger, a mysterious figure, observes from behind a tree. Jonas explores the tunnels and eventually discovers a narrow passage marked on the map. After dropping off Elizabeth at school, Charlotte tells her she'll pick her up later and heads to work. At school, Magnus unexpectedly joins Franziska's math class and follows her to the bathroom. At the police station, Charlotte instructs the medical examiner to conduct an autopsy on one of the dead songbirds, which has unusual white feathers. She recalls a similar incident 33 years ago involving these strange birds. Charlotte senses a connection between the dead birds and the missing children but can't yet decipher how they relate. When Charlotte arrives at the police station, she's confronted by one-eyed cop Torben Waller, who's upset because someone leaked information about the dead boy's body to the press. Charlotte doesn't have any instructions regarding what to disclose about the body. She inquires about Ulrich, who is not present, and orders Torben to expand the database search for matches to the dead boy dating back at least 15 years. Torben also informs Charlotte that the red soil on the dead boy's shoes doesn't match the location where the body was discovered, implying a possible connection to the crime scene. Tension and concern grow as Mikkel's disappearance reaches the 36-hour mark. Ulrich, who has been staying at Mikkel's home, is startled awake by Katarina. She informs him that Charlotte, the town's police chief, hasn't been able to obtain a search warrant for the local power plant yet. With anxiety building, Ulrich rushes out of the house. Meanwhile, Charlotte is determined to uncover any possible connections between the various disappearances in Vinden. She examines the time of Mikkel's disappearance and reviews camera footage from that period. One car is captured on the SD card's footage. Charlotte prints a screenshot of the car for further investigation. As she prints the image, Torben, who has been working on identifying tire tracks related to Eric's disappearance, enters and inquires about his task. Charlotte impatiently reminds him to work on the database as instructed. After he leaves, Charlotte examines the printed image and is shocked to discover that the license plate number of the car is clearly visible. It belongs to Peter. Peter, who seems taken aback by the red soil on the driver's side floor mat of his car, proceeds to shake it off. Charlotte calls him, revealing that she missed a call from him on the night Mikkel vanished and wonders if it was important. Peter claims he called to say he'd be late because of office work, suggesting that he was at the office writing reports on that fateful evening. Charlotte subtly confirms his alibi, and he nervously confirms that he was indeed at the office the whole time between 9:30 and 10:30 p.m., the window during which Mikkel disappeared. Charlotte makes up a feeble excuse about searching for mail and they hang up, leaving Peter relieved. Meanwhile, Franziska, aware that Magnus is following her, leads him into the woods to the old train tracks. There, she uncovers a hidden metal box and retrieves a wad of cash wrapped in paper. After re-burying the box, she returns to school, all the while being watched by Magnus, who remains hidden in the shadows, his curiosity piqued. In a small town with its share of secrets, our story unfolds with a series of intriguing events. Charlotte, a curious individual, visits a trailer on the outskirts of town where a prostitute named Benny resides. She has a pressing question about Peter, who used to be one of Benny's regular clients but hasn't seen her for a year. Benny takes pleasure in adding insult to injury by divulging intimate details about Peter, clearly harboring some ill will. Meanwhile, Jonas explores the dark caves, only to reach a dead end, leaving him visibly surprised. The cryptic words of old Helga echo in his ears: the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning. Helga eavesdrops on conversations about a mutilated body discovered in the town, which raises concern among the townsfolk. Franziska, a young student, returns to school and changes into her dance class attire, catching the eye of Magnus, who watches her closely during the class. Jonas, after leaving the caves, heads to retrieve his bike and finds a chilling surprise: a red cord tied into a noose on his handlebar, a sign of ominous intent. Ulrich, driven by his own determination, breaches the power plant's security fence in pursuit of answers. Charlotte, not one to sit idly by, journeys to the old Doppler family cabin, which bears soil similar to that found in Peter's car. During her visit, she receives a call from the medical examiner, who informs her that a dead bird shares similarities with the recently deceased boy, including burst eardrums. The ME suggests that electromagnetic fields might be to blame, caused by electrical appliances and radio waves. The bird also exhibits mysterious white spots, a mutation linked to Chernobyl, despite normal radiation levels. At the same time, Elizabeth, Charlotte's daughter, awaits her mother at school but is left hanging as Charlotte becomes absorbed in her investigation. In the cabin, Charlotte delves into a bunker but is interrupted by a call about Ulrich. After dance class, Magnus confronts Franziska about a significant amount of money she possesses, seeking answers about its origin and her intentions. Franziska confides in him, revealing her desire to escape the town, which she perceives as a haven of deception. She also discloses the breakdown of her parents' marriage, her father's true sexual orientation, and the unbearable atmosphere at home, which leads to a heated exchange, ending with an unexpected kiss. Charlotte calls her husband Peter at the office, requesting that he pick up their daughter Elizabeth from school. She needs to rescue Ulrich from a power plant incident. Peter hesitates as he has a patient to attend to but ultimately agrees. Before ending the call, Charlotte reminds Peter of a promise he made a year ago, suggesting there's something he needs to confess. Peter looks conflicted but decides to leave to get Elizabeth. However, when Peter arrives at the school, he discovers that the teacher was sick, and the kids were sent home early. Nobody informed the parents. Panicked, Peter rushes back to his car. Meanwhile, Elizabeth, having waited for a while, grows impatient and decides to walk home. Along the way, she puts on lipstick that belongs to Franziska, her sister. But her journey is cut short by a sudden downpour, and she finds an ominous Raider candy wrapper on the road. Back at the power plant, Alexander brings Charlotte to Ulrich, explaining that he had to climb over a fence. On their way back to town, Ulrich obsesses over why it was his son who disappeared and not someone from a more powerful family. He becomes convinced that more effort would be made to find the child if they were from a prominent family. He asks Charlotte to drop him off on the side of the road outside of town. Panicked, Peter calls Charlotte to inform her that he can't find Elizabeth. Charlotte gives him search instructions and decides to drive along Elizabeth's route herself. She discovers Elizabeth's hat on the ground. Upon returning home, Peter has contacted everyone in Elizabeth's class, but no one has seen her. The police continue searching the area where Charlotte found the hat late into the night. At the Nielsen household, Franziska arrives home to find her parents huddled together on the couch, and they break the grim news of Elizabeth's disappearance to her. Ulrich, too, comes home but heads straight upstairs without speaking to his wife, Katerina. Elsewhere, Jonas, puzzled by his map and undoubtedly troubled by the unfolding events in Vinden, continues his search for answers. As the town becomes engulfed in turmoil and the search for Elizabeth intensifies, Torben takes the lead in the search efforts, while Helga, who has been wandering the countryside, approaches Torben with a cryptic message, saying, "I have to tell him. He has to stop it." A few minutes after Elizabeth arrives home alone, she explains that she got tired of waiting and decided to walk back. Along the way, she encounters a man named Noah, who presents her with a pocket watch intended for someone named Charlotte. Noah reveals that the watch once belonged to Charlotte, and when she inspects it, Charlotte discovers the engraved message, "For Charlotte," on the inside cover. Franziska, Charlotte's sister, warmly embraces Elizabeth, expressing her concern. However, her mood sours when she notices Elizabeth is wearing her lipstick, and she slaps her, warning her to stay away from her belongings. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Peter pay little attention to this altercation. Torben calls Peter to inform him that Helga is in the woods. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure known as the Stranger watches Jonas as he sleeps. The Stranger takes a map from Jonas's desk drawer and adds something to it. A voiceover from a clockmaker is heard, discussing the search for the thread of Ariadne to guide them and shed light in the darkness. The voice expresses a desire to know their fate and the path they are on, but acknowledges that there is only one path through all times, predetermined by the beginning and the end, which is also a new beginning. In another scene, Helga lies in bed, grabbing the arm of a nurse standing next to him. He urgently insists that he has to stop it and I have to stop him. When asked who he needs to stop, Helga responds, "Noah." The following morning, Elizabeth's friend Yashin walks to school on his own and stumbles upon a figurine crafted from acorns sitting in the road. A man dressed in black approaches Yashin and says, "You must be Yashin. Noah sent me." In the 5th episode of the TV series Dark, the storyline delves deeper into the mysterious character Noah, exploring his presence in two different time periods, 1986 and 2019. This episode, titled Truths, brings a surge of intensity following the relative calm of the previous episode. The narrative jumps back and forth between the years 1986 and 2019, where we see one character falsely accused of rape and the investigation into the disappearance of a third boy in 2019. It becomes apparent that the kidnapper is targeting only boys, as Elizabeth narrowly escapes a similar fate in the previous episode. Hannah's obsession with Ulrich is a recurring theme in both 1986 and 2019. In 1986, they are friends, but Hannah is shown making a somewhat stalkerish scrapbook about him. In 2019, she bombards him with 22 calls, to which he remains unresponsive. The police chiefs, Charlotte in 2019 and Egon in 1986, both find themselves frustrated as they stare at their missing persons boards. In 2019, Charlotte adds Elizabeth's friend Yashin to the board, while in 1986, Egon searches for a different case to distract himself from the lack of leads regarding Mad's disappearance. In 1986, Ines checks on Mikkel in his hospital room, while in 2019, she retrieves a children's book titled I Am Not Afraid and smiles, reminiscing about her past with her son. The episode showcases 1986 Ulrich meeting Hannah on his bike, but in 2019, he sits in Mikkel's room, ignoring her persistent calls. In 2019, Martha repeatedly calls Jonas, who lies in bed, ignoring her calls. Jonas is deeply affected by a red noose left on his bike, adding to his emotional turmoil. Bartos also calls Martha repeatedly, but she too ignores his calls, creating a love triangle that takes a toll on all of them. Also in 2019, a radio announcer reporting that a 9-year-old boy named Yashin Fries has gone missing, just 3 days after the disappearance of Mikkel Nielsen. The police suspect a connection between these cases and another boy, Erik Obendorf. Charlotte approaches Elizabeth, Mikkel's friend, to gather information about Yashin's disappearance. Elizabeth doesn't believe she can help. However, when Charlotte shows her the pocket watch Elizabeth brought home, she asks about a man named Noah, whom Elizabeth mentioned. After some hesitation, Elizabeth provides a description, and Charlotte arranges for a sketch artist to work with her. Peter observes the interaction between Charlotte and Elizabeth and criticizes Charlotte for being too harsh. When Charlotte questions Peter's whereabouts the night Mikkel disappeared, he initially claims he was in his office until 11 p.m., contradicting an earlier statement of 10 p.m. Charlotte presents evidence from a wildlife camera that proves he wasn't at the office. She doesn't care about what he was doing but seeks assurance that he's not involved in the boys' disappearances. Peter responds by calling her insane and walks away, raising suspicions. In 1986, Ines tries to connect with Michael, offering him a gift and her assurance of protection. She wants to let Michael's parents know he's okay. In 2019, the Strangers Organizational Board prominently displays the question "Where is when is Mikkel?" alongside references to labyrinths and vortexes, hinting at complex space-time phenomena. Bartos continues calling Martha with no response. Suddenly, Eric's drug dealer phone rings, and a voice on the other end introduces themselves as Noah. Bartos is bewildered and questions how Noah knows him. Hannah visits Katerina and Ulrich's house, bringing a casserole as an excuse to see Ulrich. Katerina reluctantly allows her inside. After some awkward conversation, Ulrich enters the room, announcing his departure for the station. Hannah asks for a ride, and Katerina uses the opportunity to check if Hannah's perfume matches the scent she found on Ulrich's clothing the day Mikkel disappeared. Regina, a hotel receptionist, is busy dealing with cancellation calls when a stranger approaches the front desk. Regina, fearing he's checking out, as he might be their only paying customer, is relieved when he says he's going away for a few days but wants to keep his room. He also asks her to deliver an urgent package to Jonas. Jonas is visiting his friend Bartos, who's struggling with relationship issues and anxiety about Martha. Jonas advises him to wait for her to reach out, and they decide to get high and play video games. Later, Bartos confesses he's been in contact with Eric's drug dealer and has a meeting planned, asking Jonas to accompany him. In 1986, Father Noah visits Mikkel in the hospital and engages in a philosophical debate about God's plan for every human being, despite Mikkel's staunch atheism. The scene is filled with ominous music. In 2019, Ulrich drives Hannah home, ending their affair. Hannah insists her feelings can't be turned off, but Ulrich tells her to stay away from him and his family. He remembers their school days in 1986 when he left her for Katerina. Katerina reminisces about the first time she and Ulrich had sex in 1986, emphasizing their careful planning to prevent unwanted consequences. Still in 1986, Ines learns that Mikkel will be placed in a children's group home, but she worries about his sensitivity. The caseworker assures her that he'll leave the hospital in a few days. In 2019, Ulrich sits with Charlotte at the police station, lamenting that he became a cop due to mistakes in the 1986 disappearance of Mads, but he now feels like a joke as well. Charlotte introduces the concept of a 33-year cycle, suggesting that everything repeats, and she feels that something is wrong with Vinden, like a massive déjà vu. Jonas sits alone on a bench near his father's grave, his sorrow evident in his appearance. A stranger, carrying luggage, approaches and comments that Jonas bears a striking resemblance to someone named Michael. Confused, Jonas inquires if they know each other. The stranger explains that they knew Jonas's father long ago and that he had saved their life, though they didn't realize it until much later. They reflect on the complexity of life, likening it to a labyrinth with only one path leading deeper within. Understanding comes only when one reaches the center. They admit that death is incomprehensible, but it can be accepted over time, provided one makes the right choices every day. With a final, lingering look, the stranger departs, leaving Jonas to ponder their words and his father's grave. In 1986, Hannah accompanies her father on a stop at a hospital, where he works as a dry cleaner. While her father is busy inside, Hannah compares herself unfavorably to teenage Katerina and contemplates her own appearance. Her self-doubt vanishes when she spots Mikkel on a bench across the parking lot, opening a gift from Ines, a book titled I Am Not Afraid. Hannah sits near Mikkel and tries to impress him with her imagination, describing her belief in magic and how she can make things happen just by envisioning them. Intrigued, Mikkel, who is a magician, questions her about Houdini and demonstrates a bottle cap trick, emphasizing that magic is really just skillful manipulation, not actual magic. Amused, Hannah learns that Mikkel claims to come from the future, and they share a playful introduction, with Mikkel revealing his name. Hannah playfully labels him the boy from the future and introduces herself as Hannah. In 2019, Martha takes the stage in a school auditorium to perform a reading in front of an audience. Her words serve as a backdrop for a montage of images, connecting different moments and experiences through her spoken word. This is the reading. My mother told me all about the old world, before the flood. She said it had been of a different kind. Foul. She would braid my hair and recount harrowing tales of my father and of demons from the underworlds. She said all is forgiven, but nothing is forgotten. Then the darkness in her eyes was stronger than the light, and her words flowed like waves. She told me that all was well the way it was, that everything occupied its own space, in the past as well in the here and now. When she spoke like this, something would come over her. She would pull hard on my braids, as if to punish me for something that dwelled in a place deep within her. Something that pulled from inside, like a hunger that couldn't be satisfied. She spoke of the past as though it were right before her eyes. As if the present were just a veil, shrouding in shadows all that was real to her. The old world came to haunt her like a ghost, whispering to her in a dream, a way to erect the new world, stone by stone. From then on, I knew that nothing changes. That all things remain as before. The spinning wheel turns in circles, round and round. Each fate tied to the next. A thread, red like blood, that stitches together all our deeds. One cannot unravel all of the knots. They can only be severed. He severed ours with the sharpest knife. And yet something remains that can't be cut. An invisible bond. Many nights he tugs at it and I awaken startled, know that nothing has ended. All will be the same. While Martha is speaking in 2019, in 1986 Katerina and Ulrich engage in a consensual encounter in an equipment storage room. Meanwhile, teenage Hannah and her father have moved on from the hospital to the high school, where Hannah stumbles upon Ulrich and Katerina's escapade. Fast forward to 2019, Jonas arrives at the school, standing in the same courtyard where his mother, Hannah, once observed Ulrich and Katerina. He enters the auditorium and listens to Martha talk about Ariadne's red thread and severing knots, alluding to an invisible bond. Jonas ignores a call from Bartos, who later gives up waiting for Jonas and heads into the woods. In the same year, the stranger ventures back into the mysterious caves. After Martha's performance, Jonas approaches her backstage and confesses that he wasn't in France but had been in a mental health facility for PTSD. He wonders if their connection could have been more had his father not died, but he can't finish the sentence. Martha reassures him that she had feelings for him, and they share a kiss. Meanwhile, Bartos waits for a drug dealer in a back alley, where a black car stops, and its occupant, Noah, invites Bartos inside. Noah reveals himself as the same person as in 1986 and the description from Elizabeth's drawing. In 1986, Katerina and Ulrich cuddle on Mikkel's bed, but the mood is interrupted when Katerina questions Ulrich about possible infidelity. Ulrich denies the accusation. Back in 1986, Hannah hatches a plan and tells her father and the police chief Egon that she witnessed Ulrich on top of Katerina, silencing her. This leads to Ulrich's arrest. Noah safely returns Bartos to his original location in 2019. The stranger exits the caves, but the time period he's in remains unclear. Jonas returns to his room and finds a package left by the stranger. Inside the package, he discovers a futuristic handheld light, a Geiger counter, and a letter from Mikkel written shortly before his death, explaining his time travel journey to 1986. Mikkel apologizes for not being able to explain earlier and stresses that everything is connected. Ines places the book I Am Not Afraid on Michael Canwald's grave, with a note indicating it belongs to Mikkel. Jonas is overwhelmed with shock and sadness, as he realizes that Mikkel won't be coming back, and he has lost his father all over again. Finally, the stranger visits the clockmaker's shop and says, "I would like to talk to you about time." In the 6th episode of the series Dark, the Nielsen family is grappling with the profound grief caused by Mikkel's loss, and each member copes with it differently. Jonas, driven by his quest for answers, ventures deeper into the mysterious caves. Meanwhile, Regina and Alexander receive distressing news, further compounding their troubles. The episode begins with a flashback to 1986 when a young Ulrich and Katerina cruelly tied Regina to a tree near the cave, subjecting her to a terrifying experience. In the present day, Regina wakes from a nightmare, with Alexander offering her comfort. The local police, led by Charlotte, intensify their efforts to locate the missing children, instructing the entire department to engage in a thorough search. They aim to leave no stone unturned, working tirelessly and coordinating with other agencies while sifting through decades of records to find a crucial lead. Jonas inquires about his father Michael from his mother, Hannah. She shares the story of their meeting, but when Jonas probes deeper, Hannah hints at the enigmatic nature of Michael's past, leaving questions unanswered. Ulrich, determined to uncover the truth behind his brother Mad's disappearance, retrieves the case file from the archives. He listens to a recording of his mother, Jana, telling the police that she, Ulrich, and Tronte were all at home the night Mads vanished, casting doubt on the official account. At home, Martha and Magnus attempt to return to school, but their mother, Katerina, vehemently objects, feeling that it's too soon to resume normal life just days after Mikkel's disappearance. A heated argument ensues, culminating in Martha's assertion that Mikkel is dead, followed by a tense confrontation with her mother. Regina receives a letter containing distressing news about her mammogram, further adding to her troubles. Jonas, driven by his pursuit of answers, scrutinizes a map of Vinden and discovers a cryptic notation that reads, "Follow the signal." Ulrich visits his parents and questions Tronte about his whereabouts on the night Mads vanished, given discrepancies in Jana's account. Tronte's reaction suggests potential secrecy, but Jana intervenes, protecting him from further questioning. In a small town filled with secrets and mysteries, the tangled web of relationships becomes more intricate with each passing day. Jana, a woman with her own share of secrets, confides in Ulrich about her troubled marriage to Tronte. She reveals that Tronte had numerous affairs, and she had contemplated leaving him even before their son Mads disappeared. Jana drops a bombshell, stating that on the night Mads vanished, he was with Claudia Tiedman, Egon's daughter. It's clear that Egon's reluctance to thoroughly investigate Mads' disappearance was driven by a desire to protect his daughter's involvement with a married man and avoid making his granddaughter a suspect. Meanwhile, Regina, Egon's granddaughter, feels anxious as she works at the hotel front desk. She tries to reach Alexander but ends up leaving no message on his voicemail. Her life appears to be spiraling. Magnus, Mad's brother, continues to search for answers, retracing the steps of his missing sibling. He revisits the train tracks and unearths Francisca's metal box, only to find it empty. Nearby, he stumbles upon an old mattress under a railroad bridge, littered with used condoms. His discovery takes an unexpected turn when he notices a necklace with a bird pendant, which he takes with him. Jonas, on the other hand, gears up for a deeper exploration of the caves, possibly in search of answers to the time-traveling mysteries that have engulfed his town. As the evening approaches, Martha gets ready for her performance in Ariadne's Thread. Bartos, concerned for her well-being and regretful for his role in Nicole's disappearance, visits her dressing room. While he attempts to reconcile, Martha remains distant, only adding red lipstick. She kindly rejects Bartos's advances and reveals that she hasn't seen Jonas since he went missing after the encounter with a drug dealer, Noah. Bartos, although seemingly caring, is self-absorbed and oblivious to Martha's needs, despite her being the one who lost her brother. She grapples with being ignored or dismissed when she seeks solace or normalcy in a chaotic world. As the play begins, Jonas enters the cave, embarking on a journey that may unveil the enigmatic truths of his town. Meanwhile, Katerina, a mother desperate to find her missing son, returns home from posting missing child posters and discovers the phone bill. To her dismay, she finds a multitude of calls from Ulrich to a specific number. She dials that number and is shocked when Hannah, a familiar face in town, answers. Without saying a word, Katerina hangs up, leaving us to wonder about the secrets that lie beneath the surface of their seemingly ordinary lives. At the hotel, tensions rise as Ulrich confronts Regina about the disappearance of their friend, Mads. Regina starts by praising Mads as the nicest person she's ever known and criticizes Ulrich, insinuating that he deserved to vanish, not Mads. Regina points out that Mads wouldn't have been in the forest on that fateful night if it weren't for Ulrich and Katerina's recent harassment of her. He had walked her home because she was afraid. Ulrich dismisses the events as a mere game taken too seriously by Regina, echoing the classic defense of bullies. Ulrich escalates the confrontation by accusing Regina of reporting him for rape as an act of revenge. Regina is dumbfounded by this accusation and rightly questions how Hannah could have witnessed her turning him in, especially given the circumstances. Regina also points out that Hannah had always been infatuated with Ulrich and still is, making her motive for revenge highly unlikely. Katerina, meanwhile, sits in her car and listens to a talk radio program discussing the missing children in Vinden. Overwhelmed, she calls in to express her belief that there is a murderer among them. She urges people to acknowledge the harsh reality that they don't truly know those around them. Katerina believes the entire town is diseased and that anyone's door could conceal the truth. This sentiment seems to touch various characters in different ways. While Katerina speaks, Ulrich looks into his police file to see who reported him, Hannah. Alexander discovers an envelope from a mammography center, revealing that Regina's health is deteriorating. Tronte and Peter head to the mysterious bunker. Martha scans the audience for a performance, Bartos is among the onlookers, and Regina watches the hotel's income decline. Each character seems to represent a different aspect of the town's dark secrets. Alexander embodies the truth and hope related to Regina's cancer. Ulrich symbolizes blindness to what's happening and the deception around him, associated with Hannah's betrayal. Martha and Bartos are implicated as potential threats by Katerina's words, raising questions about their roles in future events. Meanwhile, Alexander contacts the mammography center to get Regina's test results. He learns that Regina has invasive carcinomas that have spread. The news leaves him speechless. Lastly, Jonas stumbles upon a red cord tied to a tie-down in a cave, sparking his curiosity as he decides to follow it into the unknown. Ulrich, deeply upset, confronts Hannah at her house, accusing her of being toxic despite her sweet facade. He questions how her husband endured her for so long, insinuating that it's no surprise he did what he did. Hannah, enraged by the comment about her husband, slaps Ulrich. Ulrich realizes that he thought he knew Hannah, but people can be deceiving. In a scene from a play, a character mentions the daughter of Minos, Ariadne, played by Martha, who may seem beautiful and good but has deceived the audience. The character emphasizes that everyone, even a princess, has a dark side. The scene transitions from Hannah to the actor delivering the speech and ends with Bartos, the current prince of Vinden. Jonas continues to follow Ariadne's thread. In the bunker, Peter informs Tronte that there are 19 minutes left. Alexander calls Regina to check when she's coming home. She's waiting to pick up Bartos after the play and reciprocates Alexander's love. On stage, Ariadne instructs Theseus on how to defeat the Minotaur, her half-brother, in exchange for his promise never to leave her. She binds their hands with a magical thread, creating an unbreakable bond. Jonas reaches the end of the red thread and uses the Geiger counter sent by the stranger to guide him. It leads him to a coffin-sized tunnel. Meanwhile, Ariadne, in the play, speaks of eternal darkness and impending death as she descends into her own maze. She reveals a black sheath under her white dress. In the tunnel, Jonas finds a small metal door with the words Sic Mundus Creatus Est engraved on it. Katerina, sitting in the auditorium, is moved to tears. Martha/Ariadne struggles to continue her performance, and Katerina goes to comfort her. The play's message resonates, emphasizing that in death, all individuals face the same fate, regardless of their background or circumstances, with their only judge being themselves. Jonas embarks on a mysterious journey. He opens a metal door that leads to a powerful rush of air and wind on the other side. Struggling to hold the door open, he manages to crawl through before it slams shut, leaving the air cam as the pressure equalizes. Meanwhile, back in Vinden, chaos unfolds. The lights flicker throughout the town, and Katerina assists Martha off the stage, making Bartos and the rest of the audience uneasy. A photograph of Mikkel from 1987 is highlighted in the school's display case. Simultaneously, near the caves and a wildlife camera, Charlotte senses the ground rumbling, as do Tronte and Peter. Tronte verifies the time in a logbook, and Peter checks his watch. Katerina guides Martha out of the school, while Regina enters to pick up Bartos. In a moment of cruelty, Regina taunts Katerina, suggesting she leave if she can't handle the sick people in town. Katerina, overwhelmed by her circumstances, reacts by repeatedly slapping Regina, even after she falls to the ground. Regina's hurtful words about Katerina's family and her lost son trigger this outburst. Magnus intervenes, pulling Katerina away from Regina, who accuses Katerina of being her true self in front of her children. She urges Katerina to reveal the secrets of their past. Katerina, taking her children, departs in the wake of this tumultuous scene. In the midst of these events, Jonas follows a tunnel to a fork and chooses the right path. At the end of the tunnel, he discovers an identical door to the one he initially entered. Passing through it, the door slams shut behind him, marking the end of the disturbances in Vinden. In another part of the town, Ulrich examines photos of Mads in Jana's album and notices identifying characteristics he hadn't previously recognized. Regina, emotionally drained, returns home and finds solace in Alexander's comforting arms. Katerina and her children, holding hands in unity, head home, burdened by the perplexing events of the day. Later, Martha seeks out her brother Magnus, and together, they attempt to make sense of the mysterious occurrences involving their mother, Regina. They long for the return of normalcy but realize that parents have enigmatic pasts hidden from their children, which keeps them from truly understanding each other. Martha ends up sleeping in Magnus' room, but he resists her cold feet, holding onto the bird necklace that has become a symbol of his experiences. Jonas, emerging from the cave, finds himself in a seemingly identical forest to the one he left. He walks to a bus stop, a familiar hangout for teenage Hannah and Ulrich, where rain begins to pour down. Teenage Hannah and her father pull up beside Jonas in their van and offer him a ride. As Hannah advises Jonas not to stay out in the rain due to its supposed contamination from Chernobyl, Jonas is taken aback by her words. He recognizes her and looks as though he's seen a ghost, leaving Hannah puzzled by his reaction. Jonas's strange response to her adds to Hannah's growing insecurities about men, a sentiment amplified by her previous experiences with Mikkel's disappearance. Meanwhile, Ulrich goes to the morgue to view the body of an unidentified boy found shortly after Mikkel's disappearance. To his shock, the boy has the same scar on his chin as Mads, revealing that he has found his long-lost brother. In the 7th episode of the series Dark, titled Crossroads, a complex web of people, locations, and time periods begins to intersect, deepening the mystery while also providing some answers. The central characters in this episode are Charlotte, Ulrich, and Jonas. Jonas, after exploring the town of Vinden in 1986, grapples with a significant decision regarding Mikkel, the boy who time-traveled to the past and became Michael, the man. Meanwhile, Ulrich continues his investigation into the disappearance and death of Mads, using the flawed 1986 investigation conducted by Egon as a starting point. Charlotte finally obtains a search warrant for the power plant, which leads to some suspicious discoveries. Both Charlotte and Ulrich uncover new connections involving Helga, his cabin, and the mysterious caves, suggesting that everything in the town is intricately linked. The episode starts with a disoriented young Helga in 1953, in a room filled with blood and dirt. He suddenly wakes up in 2019, as an old man, with a realization that he remembers everything. In 1986, Ulrich is still in custody for the alleged rape of Katarina, while 2019 Ulrich visits Mads' empty grave. Mikkel, who's stuck in the hospital, contemplates an ancient drawing, and Jonas wakes up in 1986, recalling the letter from his father. Ulrich investigates Mads' death further, trying to ascertain if he died earlier and was preserved. Jonas encounters teenage Regina and inquires about Michael and Ines Canwald. Egon's boss assigns him the task of interviewing power plant workers, frustrating Egon's personal vendetta against Ulrich. Ulrich spreads out his investigation evidence in Mikkel's room to connect the dots. Charlotte receives a search warrant for the power plant, which triggers a police search. Ulrich informs Charlotte that Helga never showed up for the interview in 1986, suggesting that Helga might be connected to Mads' disappearance. Charlotte is skeptical and advises Ulrich to explore new directions in his investigation. In 1986, as a heavy rain poured down, Jonas found himself walking alone on a deserted street. It was a gloomy and lonely scene until a man named Egon pulled over and offered him a ride to the hospital. During the journey, Egon asked Jonas a series of intrusive questions, including whether kids were involved in Satanism these days. Jonas chuckled and assured him that they weren't. Meanwhile, Charlotte decided to take a walk along the state road, the same path Helga had taken in 1986 instead of the forest road. She stumbled upon tire tracks in the muddy ground, evidence that trucks had been in this remote part of the property. As she ventured further, she came across a fence and gate, the same ones Bernd had shown Claudia in 1986. Intrigued, she rappelled down into the cave that Bernd had once sent Claudia to, where there had been piles of barrels. However, to her astonishment, they were all gone. This was why Alexander had fought so hard against the search warrant, to to gain time to remove the barrels and dispose of any incriminating evidence hidden for decades. Charlotte noticed some broken bits of yellow from the barrels. As she continued exploring the cave, she stumbled upon a metal door, seemingly welded shut or repeatedly forced. This door led to the power plant basement, or so it seemed. Her surprise suggested she had doubted Ulrich's claim when he mentioned finding it. Meanwhile, Ulrich went to a nursing home and woke up Helga for questioning. He wasted no time and began bombarding the old man with inquiries, even placing his hands on Helga's chest, ignoring the man's evident distress. Helga's vital signs started to go haywire, prompting nurses to rush into the room and discover Ulrich. Despite being dragged away, Ulrich persisted in asking Helga about Mikkel. Helga gazed at Ulrich, recognizing him, and cryptically mentioned that he could alter the past and the future but needed assistance. He concluded with an ominous tick-tock, hinting at the mysterious nature of their connection and the impending events. In a tense moment, Jonas discovers Mikkel and Ines sitting on a bench outside. He watches them from a distance when the enigmatic stranger approaches him. "Stranger, how little we understand of the world." Jonas questions his sanity. "Is this real, or am I as crazy as my father? Do you even exist, or are you merely a figment of a lunatic's imagination?" The stranger reassures him, "You're not crazy, and neither was your father. Sometimes, it's difficult to accept things that challenge our conditioned beliefs. Think about how people felt when they first learned the earth was round." Jonas admits, "Yes, it's completely insane." The stranger challenges his perspective. "What if it isn't?" Jonas is bewildered. "How can that be? Are you saying there's a rift in time in that cave? So Mikkel stays in 1986. So he's my dad." The stranger delivers a shocking revelation. "Even if you don't want to believe it, that is your father." Jonas processes this information. "That means Ulrich is my grandfather, and..." The stranger confirms, "Martha is your aunt." Jonas is in disbelief. "That's unbelievable. I'm taking him back and setting things right." The stranger, forcefully shoving Jonas against an ambulance, warns, "Don't you get it? If you take Mikkel back, you're altering the sequence of events. Your father never meets your mother, they never fall in love or get married, and you're never born. If you take him back now, you'll erase your own existence. Your role in this is much more significant than you think. Every decision for something is a decision against something else, a life for a life. What will you decide?" With that, the stranger makes a dramatic exit, leaving Jonas with a monumental choice to make. In the present day, Charlotte decides to suspend her colleague Ulrich from the force and sends him home. Before leaving, Ulrich desperately tries to convince Charlotte that the dead boy they found is connected to the town's string of missing children and urges her to question Helga further, but she remains skeptical. In the year 1986, Helga finishes work, indulges in a Raiders candy bar, and sets off to carry out the enigmatic tasks assigned to him by Noah. Egon, a persistent police officer, doesn't probe Helga. Instead, he attempts to coerce teenage Katerina into revealing the truth about something. However, she remains steadfast in sticking to her version of events. Back in the present day, Ulrich returns home to his wife Katerina, apologizing for his absence and promising to be present now. However, Katerina informs him that he hasn't been truly present for a long time. She reveals that she knows about his affair with Hannah, which shocks Ulrich. He inquires whether Hannah had told her, but Katerina confesses that she had sensed it all along. She declines Ulrich's offer to explain and passes on a message from Jana, stating that she only wanted to discuss their missing son, Mads, not their other missing child, Mikkel. Meanwhile, in 1986, Jonas watches from the shadows as his parents, Hannah and Mikkel, unexpectedly encounter each other in the hospital hallway. They walk away together, and Jonas reflects on the letter he holds and the cryptic words of a mysterious man known as the Stranger. He leaves the hospital without approaching Mikkel. Ulrich engages in a poignant conversation with Jana, questioning whether she would still want to know if Mads had died after all these years. Jana reveals that Tronti, her husband, desired the empty grave because he believed it would bring her closure, but she still envisions Mads as alive, happy, and free. She imparts a message of hope, emphasizing that one should never give up on hope and that there is as much light as darkness. As Jana continues to speak, she reveals information about a strange encounter she had witnessed 1 week before Mads disappeared. She saw a priest arguing with a man, which she found peculiar. To her astonishment, she saw the same man with a disfigured ear that morning, looking exactly as he did 33 years ago. Simultaneously, in 1986, Helga heads towards a mysterious bunker, removes dead branches concealing its entrance, and goes inside. In the small town of Vinden, a complex web of mysteries is unraveling. Torben Waller, a local police officer, brings Charlotte a map of the cave system, which she requested to investigate the caves extending to the forest road near the Doppler cabin. Waller mentions that the entire cave system hasn't been fully mapped, but at least part of it extends under the south part of the forest road. He becomes curious about Charlotte's interest in the cabin's vicinity but is met with her usual reluctance to share her motives. Observing Charlotte's work, someone reflects that Waller should keep a log of everything he sees and is asked, as it might enable him to solve cases independently. After dark, Charlotte drives to the Doppler cabin and calls Peter, questioning him about Helga. She learns that Peter didn't move to Vinden until 1987, so he has limited knowledge of the events of 1986. Charlotte inquires why Helga kept the cabin, particularly after his accident in 1986, but Peter avoids her questions, encouraging her to stop investigating and return to her family. Meanwhile, Ulrich finds Mikkel's yellow game pawn in his car and recalls Mikkel's cryptic statement about when. He alters his route and Charlotte investigates the bunker. Jonas returns to the mysterious time travel door, accompanied by a choir of angels singing and flickering lights across 2 different time periods. Mikkel closely examines the framed emerald tablet. Egon drinks heavily, and teenage Ulrich finds comfort in a peculiar light phenomenon in his cell. Helga gets out of bed, suggesting it's time to make amends, and Charlotte makes a horrifying discovery in the bunker. She recognizes marks on the floor and a discarded piece of wallpaper from the torture room. Jonas emerges from the cave, returning to 2019, and shares an emotional moment with his mother, Hannah. Later, he sits in Michael's studio and burns a letter, raising questions about how the Stranger will later retrieve it. Ulrich uncovers a connection between Helga and various mysterious occurrences, including Mads' body, Yashin's disappearance, and the torture room, through items like a coin, acorn crafts, and the book A Journey Through Time. Helga leaves his room in the nursing home and heads towards the caves. Ulrich follows him, leaving a message for Charlotte, suggesting that the real question isn't who abducted the kids, but when it happened. Inside the cave, Helga discovers a hidden lantern and uses it to navigate towards the time travel doors. Ulrich follows him. In 2019, the 1986 version of Helga emerges from the cave with a boy's body wrapped in a canvas tarp, potentially Yashin. The boy wears a coin necklace, and Helga seems emotionally distraught by his grim task. Meanwhile, a young Noah is seen in the bunker, cleaning bloodstains from the floor. His shirtless back reveals an emerald tablet tattoo. He notices the camera, adds a date to the bunker wall, the 9th of November 1953. Episode 8 of Dark, Ulrich follows Helga from 2019 back to 1953, and the show introduces a new generation of characters, which is quite unusual for most TV series, but Dark is anything but ordinary. The new characters include a young Helga, Jana, Ines, Claudia, and Tronte, as well as some of their parents. One character of particular interest is Agnes, Tronte's mother, who arrives in town as a single mother with a striking red dress and a mysterious, flirtatious demeanor that hides some hidden secrets. This episode delves into Helga's origin story and begins to unravel why Egon has always been suspicious of Ulrich. While Egon has had valid reasons to dislike Ulrich, he's also proven to be an inept investigator. Meanwhile, the episode shifts between 1953 Vinden and the Stranger and the Clockmaker in 1986, engaging in a deep discussion about physics, starting with wormholes and delving into time loops and the creation of time machines. As the episode unfolds, the quote, "Hell is empty and all the devils are here," from Shakespeare's The Tempest, sets a foreboding tone for Vinden. Even though we're approaching the end of the season, the events in 1953 feel like Act 1 in a three-part time loop cycle. In the year 1953, a power plant under construction is nothing but a chaotic dream and a massive work in progress. Young Helga pedals his bicycle along a rough, unpaved road towards the site, oblivious to the imminent encounter with Egon, the local police officer, who races by him in his Volkswagen Beetle police cruiser with flashing blue lights and a blaring siren. Upon reaching the site, Helga keeps his distance and observes from the outskirts. Egon shoots him disapproving glances, both on the way there and once they arrive. The site spokesperson guides Egon to a grim discovery: two young boys buried in shallow graves within a mound of sand. Strangely, the boys' clothing appears to be from a future time period, resembling bizarre costumes to the people of 1953. Hovering over the construction site, a billboard featuring Bernd Doppler and his family points toward the future, bearing the message, "An important investment, nuclear power for every household." The ominous sight adds to the surreal atmosphere. One of the deceased boys stands out due to his red hair, adding to the mystery surrounding their deaths. Following the opening credits, a mysterious figure known as the Stranger pays a visit to the Clockmaker to engage in a conversation about physics. They resume a previous discussion and delve into the concept of the Einstein-Rosen bridge, a passage connecting a black hole, the entry, and a white hole, the exit, uniting time and space. Traveling through this bridge enables one to journey through time. Meanwhile, Ulrich continues his pursuit of old Helga, venturing deeper into the caves. Guided by a thread resembling Ariadne's, he eventually stumbles upon the enigmatic time travel doors. As Ulrich takes his first steps as a time traveler, the Clockmaker, Tannhaus, imparts a philosophical insight, challenging the conventional notion of dualism and introducing the concept of the triquetra. The Stranger mentions the Trinity not, but Tannhaus speaks of the importance of a third dimension, beyond just going up and down, particularly in relation to the time-space continuum. He believes that a wormhole connects not two, but three dimensions, linking the past, present, and future. Meanwhile, young Helga is riding his bike back home, which in 2019 has become Regina's hotel. His mother, Greta, is a stern and attractive woman who scolds Helga for being dirty. She commands him to undress in the foyer, and when he hesitates, she tweaks his ear. Helga reluctantly obeys, standing alone in front of the front door. Bernd, who has a limp, likely from a war injury, returns home. He seems somewhat afraid of Greta and doesn't intervene in her harsh treatment of Helga. Helga tells Bernd about the dead boys he encountered at a construction site, and Bernd rushes back to oversee the situation. Greta provides Helga with a pair of short pants and informs him that he'll be late for his tutoring session with Claudia, leaving money on the table for Claudia. At the morgue, the coroner examines the bodies of the dead boys, expressing astonishment at the unusual burns he's observed. He suggests the burns might be from a phosphorus grenade and notes that both boys' ears were destroyed. Strangely, he finds coins from 1986 suspended on red cords around both of their necks. The coroner notes that one has dark hair and appears to be of Mediterranean descent, while the other sports a peculiar unicorn tattoo. What's truly bizarre, however, are the tags in their clothing that read "Made in China." This revelation momentarily perplexes Egon. Meanwhile, Ulrich, who was lost in the cave, emerges into a different era. A metal gate blocks part of the cave entrance, signaling that he has time traveled to the year 1953. Before attending his lesson with Claudia, Helga visits a cabin where he discovers that the bunker is already constructed. As he plays with a stick, pretending it's a gun, he ventures down into the bunker, finding Noah's chalk-dated markings on the wall. The room lacks wallpaper but contains a cot and shelves stocked with food and various items. Helga's attention is fixated on the numbers etched on the wall. Cut to the clockmaker and the enigmatic stranger engaged in a deep conversation. The stranger mentions Nietzsche's concept of the eternal recurrence, where the universe expands and collapses endlessly. He presents a rare book titled A Journey Through Time, surprising the clockmaker, who reveals that only 500 copies of this book were ever printed. The stranger then discusses the 33-year cosmic cycle detailed in the book. The clockmaker, Tannhaus, explains that every 33 years, the moon's cycle synchronizes with that of the sun, and this number is recurrent in various aspects of our world. He references 33 miracles performed by Jesus, 33 angelic litanies, Dante's 33 cantos in Purgatory, and 33 more in Paradise. The stranger adds that 33 is also the age at which the rule of the Antichrist begins, leaving the audience to ponder the significance of this mysterious number in the unfolding events of their town. In one unsettling scene, Noah, an enigmatic figure, holds a leather-bound logbook that once belonged to Tronte and Peter in the bunker. He appears shifty as a church bell ominously rings in the background. Meanwhile, Egon, a perplexed police officer, ponders aloud about the brutal murders happening in his town. He discusses the motivations behind becoming a murderer with another man, possibly Daniel Canwald. They both wonder if there's a way to identify potential murderers before they harm anyone, a concept reminiscent of Egon's actions in 1986 against Ulrich. Helga, a young boy, leaves his cabin to meet Claudia for a tutoring session but is accosted by two teenage bullies who steal his money, assault him, and humiliate him. Just in the nick of time, Ulrich, a time traveler, arrives and scares the bullies away. Ulrich advises young Helga to defend himself, even suggesting biting his tormentors, as they are much larger. In another thread of the story, the clockmaker delves into the intricacies of time travel. He describes how a wormhole can bend space-time, altering the natural flow of events. To illustrate this, he transforms a flat piece of paper into a tube, demonstrating that light can curve back on itself, forming a loop. Ulrich, who has somehow found himself in the past, runs toward town and is perplexed by the old cars and dirt roads. A young woman named Agnes Nielsen approaches him, seeking directions to Egon Tiedemann's house, and introduces her son as Tronte. To Ulrich's shock, Agnes reveals that it's 1953. Back in the clockmaker's workshop, he questions whether time travel can change past events or if causal determinism prevents altering what has already occurred. The stranger, another time traveler, inquires if the clockmaker is done dreaming of time travel, to which the clockmaker responds that his dreams have evolved, and now he belongs in the present. In 1953, Ulrich visits the clock shop where a much younger H.G. Tannhaus works. He shows Tannhaus a book called A Journey Through Time, with Tannhaus's photo on the back and questions if he's the author. Confused, Tannhaus explains that he hasn't written the book yet and they are in 1953, leaving Ulrich in disbelief. The stranger mentions a theory from the book, suggesting that the number 33 may be the time difference between the planes of a three-dimensional wormhole. Older Tannhaus acknowledges that the 33-year time difference is his theory. In 1953, Claudia was playing with her dog, Gretchen, when she heard a knock at the door. It was Helga, who was running late and didn't have the money he owed. Despite this, Claudia let him inside, and they began working on math problems at the table. Meanwhile, Claudia's mother, Doris, was showing Agnes and Tronte around the house. They were renting the upstairs apartment, which had 2 bedrooms and a kitchen. Unfortunately, the water in the apartment wasn't functioning properly, and the plumber had yet to arrive. Doris introduced Claudia and Gretchen to the new tenants and also mentioned Egon, a police officer who was rarely home, describing him as a busybody who felt overly responsible for their town. Agnes mentioned that her husband had passed away, but Tronte's reaction raised doubts about the truth of her statement. Doris was embarrassed for bringing it up, but Agnes accepted her apology. The narrative suggested that if Mr. Nielsen was indeed dead, Agnes and/or Tronte might have had a hand in it. Doris then led Agnes upstairs, asking Claudia to show Tronte around the neighborhood once she was finished with Helga's math lesson. At the clock shop, Tannhaus had given Ulrich some water to prevent him from passing out. Young Ines and Jana entered the shop to pick up Ines' father's watch. Ines excitedly shared the news that 2 dead boys had been found at the Doppler construction site that morning. Rumors were circulating that they had been killed by aliens. This shocking revelation prompted Ulrich to jump out of his chair and confront Ines about what she had just said. In his haste, he left the shop, forgetting his jacket behind. At the construction site in Winden, Bernd stands before a press conference, fervently extolling the virtues of nuclear power as the energy source of the future. Behind him, police officers set up barricades to cordon off the area, considering it a crime scene. Bernd passionately claims that the tiny atom will revolutionize the world, with Winden being chosen as the site for the first German nuclear power plant, promising stability and prosperity for the town. Later, Egon approaches Bernd, seeking a list of all the workers who've been at the site. Bernd dismisses the idea of investigating disgruntled employees, insisting that the bodies found were likely planted by the anti-nuclear big coal interests, as they fear nuclear power will put them out of business. He points out the suspicious timing of the body's appearance, just a day after he applied for a permit at the city council. Egon remains skeptical of this theory, so Bernd elaborates, explaining that the success of nuclear power means a shift in wealth, which threatens those like the coal plant operators who stand to lose out. They are desperate to prevent this change. In another part of Winden, Claudia, Tronte, and a dog named Gretchen venture into the woods, with Helga following them from a distance. Upon reaching a cave, Claudia reveals it as their secret hideaway, admitting they're not allowed to venture deep inside. Tronte is about to accept a dare to enter when Claudia decides it's time for Helga to head home. As Claudia and Tronte depart, Helga throws a stick into the cave for Gretchen to chase. However, Gretchen disappears into the cave, ignoring Claudia's calls. Ulrich rushes to the police station and confronts Egon, demanding to know if one of the dead boys is his son. Egon describes the bodies of Eric and Yashin, then asks if Ulrich has reported his son Mikkel's disappearance. Ulrich realizes Mikkel is not among the deceased. He then inquires about Helga, specifically the older version from 2019. Egon informs him that the older Doppler is Bernd, leading Ulrich to make a significant connection. Meanwhile, the older Tannhaus questions the stranger's intense fascination with time. The stranger responds, expressing a desire to understand if he can change the course of time. He contemplates the existence of a predetermined purpose, the concept of free will, the possibility of a universe driven by random coincidence, and the idea of an eternal cycle where people are mere captives of space and time, pondering whether destiny is dictated by a higher power or constantly recreated. Egon returns home from work to find his wife, Doris, excitedly telling him about their new tenants. She describes one of them, Agnes, as odd but nice, and it's clear that she may find Agnes attractive, though Egon doesn't seem to notice. Egon appears tired and distant, and Doris asks if something is wrong, to which Egon denies any problems. Doris introduces Egon to Agnes, and they engage in polite conversation. However, Egon becomes increasingly suspicious of Agnes's behavior, particularly her constant attention to Doris. He questions her as if she were a suspect, while Doris tries to downplay his curiosity. Agnes shares that her grandmother was from Vinden and always spoke highly of the town. When Egon inquires about her grandmother's last name, they are interrupted by Claudia and Tronte rushing in, worried about their missing dog, Gretchen. Doris suggests that Gretchen might be with Helga and sends Egon to check. This situation raises questions about Doris's feelings towards Egon's long working hours, as she had just given him a new case to solve and requested that he not be late. Meanwhile, an older Tannhaus discusses the impact of time loops on causality, emphasizing that everything within a closed time loop is mutually dependent, with the past and future influencing each other. Ulrich seeks out Helga at the mansion and identifies him as a young boy. He shows Helga a pfennig coin from the future and questions whether Helga has seen it before. Helga claims he hasn't and shares his peculiar fascination with collecting dead birds that have fallen from the sky. Ulrich informs Helga of his future as a killer and tries to prevent it by brutally attacking him. Egon visits the mansion to inquire about Gretchen and speaks with Greta Doppler, who is certain that the dog did not come home with Helga. Greta later discovers Helga's box of collected dead birds. Ulrich takes Helga to a bunker, leaving him to die alone. Back at the apartment, Doris and Agnes make beds together, and there is an unsettling tension as they touch hands and exchange glances when they believe the other isn't looking. Claudia is deeply upset about Gretchen's disappearance, and Tronte secretly checks cigarette burns on his arm. Egon, on a forest road, reflects on his rosary, suggesting a moment of introspection. Finally, another version of the bunker is found stockpiled with weapons, grenades, and a murder board, possibly hinting at events in the future. In the dimly lit clockmaker's shop, a solemn voice fills the air, asserting the interconnectedness of lives, the intricate dance of cause and effect. It's a theory, but is it reality? The stranger, a mysterious figure, confronts the clockmaker, Tannhaus, and drops a bombshell. Everything in Tannhaus' book is correct. Time travel is not just a theory, it's real, and his idea of wormholes forming through gravitational impulses holds true. Moreover, Vinden, the town they find themselves in, harbors a wormhole. The stranger has journeyed from the future, traversing the wormhole to arrive in 1986. Intriguingly, the stranger reveals a wooden box filled with gears he had kept in his hotel room. Tannhaus had constructed this device, but he had doubted its functionality. The stranger explains that the contraption can open a portal 33 years into the past or future, but it's currently broken, and he requires Tannhaus' expertise to repair it. Curious about the origins of the Vinden wormhole, Tannhaus learns that a few months ago, a nuclear plant accident had unleashed a burst of energy that birthed the wormhole. The device, it appears, can replicate this process and create new wormholes. However, Tannhaus assumes that the stranger intends to create another wormhole, yet the stranger has a different plan in mind, to destroy the existing Vinden wormhole. Tannhaus demands the stranger to leave his shop, but the determined traveler persists, convinced that Vinden is a festering wound, and the townspeople are entwined in its fate. With the device, he believes he can set things right. As he begins to pack up his suitcase, he abruptly stops and emphasizes his knowledge of the future, asserting that things must be corrected, and Tannhaus must assist him. Once the stranger departs, Tannhaus retrieves an identical, pristine version of the time machine from a hidden shelf. Meanwhile, young Tannhaus closes the shop for the night and finds Ulrich's jacket left on a chair. He hangs it up, then picks up Ulrich's phone. Examining the device, he turns it on, ushering in the world of the future. It remains to be seen what Ulrich had downloaded onto his phone and how much of it Tannhaus will explore before the battery dwindles. Perhaps not Stephen Hawking, but possibly some modern science fiction filled with assumptions and exposition based on contemporary theories. In another corner of the mysterious town, Ulrich lurks in darkness, intently watching the bunker door. Suddenly, a knocking sound emerges from inside the bunker. In episode 9 of Dark, titled Everything Is Now, we delve deeper into the complex web of time travel and its consequences. The clockmaker's opening voiceover hints that the initial time travelers were essentially using reality as their laboratory to explore the universe's mysteries. However, these experiments had significant repercussions on the timeline. As a result, subsequent time travelers have been working tirelessly to repair the damage caused by these earlier experiments, whether to return home or correct the wrongs committed by those outside their designated time. This episode provides a unique perspective on the unfolding events by presenting simultaneous occurrences in all three time periods, 1953, 1986, and 2019. The cause and effect loop between these periods is laid bare. Following the philosophical discussions of time and the universe in the previous episode, we finally hear Noah's perspective as he shares his worldview with Helga. Additionally, several crucial events that were previously mentioned but unseen are now brought to the forefront. The episode begins with a close-up flash of the various versions of characters, starting with Jonas and ending with Stranger, and ultimately Noah, emphasizing the singular nature of Noah's existence. The story then shifts to the morning after Ulrich's assault on young Helga and his subsequent confinement in the bunker. Bernd and Greta, Helga's parents, are deeply worried. Greta speculates on Helga's fate, considering whether he has been kidnapped or murdered, given the recent discovery of dead boys near the power plant construction site. She also wonders if Helga ran away because she was too harsh on him about his dirty clothing. Bernd decides to report Helga's disappearance to the police and implores Egon to find his son at any cost, prioritizing this above all else. Egon, upon receiving this report, informs the police chief, Daniel Canwald, about Helga's disappearance. He also shares his encounter with Ulrich from the previous day but is instructed by Daniel not to mention Ulrich to Helga's father just yet. Meanwhile, Tronte and Claudia embark on a search for a missing dog named Gretchen. As they walk through the woods, Claudia comments on Tronte's hairstyle, comparing him to James Dean, and anticipates that he will be popular with the middle school girls in Vinden. Claudia then asks why they left their previous home, humorously suggesting the possibility of them being bank robbers. Tronte explains that Agnes wanted a change of scenery, and Claudia praises Agnes for her elegance. In 1953, a curious dynamic between Claudia, Agnes, and Doris unfolds. Agnes, now wearing a blue dress symbolizing mystery, tries to gift Doris a stylish yellow gold dress, presumably created with Doris in mind. However, Doris feels uneasy in the extravagant dress, which appears too fancy for the everyday life in Vinden. Their conversation takes a personal turn when Doris inquires about Agnes' marriage. Agnes reveals that she was married for 15 years to a pastor who neither believed in God nor was a good person. She reflects on her newfound freedom since his passing. Doris, who has been married to Egon for 10 years, expresses dissatisfaction with their relationship, as Egon seems more devoted to his work than to her. The scene concludes with an uncomfortable moment when Agnes insists on helping Doris with the dress, which Doris reluctantly accepts. However, Doris decides that she is not comfortable with the dress and decides to take it off, fearing that Agnes' newfound freedom may somehow affect her. This episode of Dark continues to intricately weave together the lives of its characters across different time periods, shedding light on the consequences of time travel and the complex relationships that bind them. Greta shares her innermost thoughts with Father Noah. She reveals her guilt and doubts about her child, praying for his misfortune every day, as she suspects he might not be her husband Bernd's child. Father Noah reassures her, reminding her that everyone is flawed, and even in their lowest moments, they are in God's hands. Greta, however, questions if those hands might belong to the devil. Noah believes that their meeting has a purpose, guided by destiny and fate, and that they need to embrace it. Greta ponders if she married Bernd out of necessity, not love, and whether she should bring a child conceived in such circumstances into a loveless home. Meanwhile, Ulrich walks alone, reciting the 23rd Psalm for comfort, and Egon encounters him. Ulrich's confused about the events, thinking he changed time by attempting to stop Helga from harming anyone, erasing the memory of the murdered boys. Egon arrests him, and Ulrich mutters, "But I changed it." In the bunker, Helga lies unconscious, resembling a martyr or a fallen bird, his innocence lost. Suddenly, he awakens with a gasping breath. In the forest, a young man wearing a ski mask and leather jacket escapes from pursuing dogs. He checks a bleeding shoulder wound and is revealed as the bank robber that Claudia had foreseen. Teenage Katerina, outside her school, smokes, and Hannah approaches her, inquiring about Ulrich's situation. Hannah tries to find out who turned Ulrich in, and when Katerina can't provide an answer, Hannah suggests that Regina might be responsible. Egon, fueled by alcohol and a wild imagination, confronts Ulrich, warning him about being an evil member of the Evil League of Evil, vowing to watch his every move. This declaration is more a product of Egon's inebriated state and his dream of becoming like Javert, but it unnerves Ulrich nonetheless. Jana intervenes, slapping Egon and demanding he stay away from her family, insisting he be removed from Mad's case. Ulrich smirks as they leave, and Egon stands silently. Meanwhile, Claudia descends into the cave with the yellow barrels, equipped with a Geiger counter, discovering they are radioactive but not off the charts. To her amazement, Gretchen, a dog that vanished into the cave in 1953, re-emerges unchanged from 33 years ago, leaving Claudia bewildered. Katerina and Ulrich share a cigarette by the watchtower, with Ulrich sharing Egon's belief that he is the Antichrist. Regina walks by, and Katerina accuses her of turning Ulrich in for rape, an accusation that stems from Hannah's suggestion. A confrontation ensues, and a man in a leather jacket intervenes, brandishing a gun to protect Regina, who offers to help him. His name is Alexander. Claudia seeks answers from Bernd, who still resides in the mansion, regarding the barrels. Bernd reveals an incident involving a volume control system malfunction caused by corrosion to the chemical feed-in system, leading to an explosion. He insists it was an accident, not a test, and they replaced the tubes afterward. Claudia questions the cave's stability and safety, to which Bernd claims it's as safe as other interim storage facilities. He admits that only the night shift crew, including Helga, knows about the accident, and they were paid off to remain silent. Claudia tries to ask if the explosion had other consequences, but Bernd challenges her to voice her suspicions. The passage ends with a sense that the all-male leadership is underestimating her due to her gender. Bernd shares a profound perspective with someone, emphasizing the power of storytelling. The safety of the local power plant, a pressing concern, is in the hands of those who shape its narrative. In the year 2019, Helga observes his 1986 self emerging from a bunker, his hands stained with blood. While his older self works on crafting in a cabin, he hides from Egon, who eventually departs. Alexander finds a secluded spot in the forest to bury his past, represented by a plastic bag containing a handgun and his original passport. He assumes a new identity as Alexander Cooler. Unbeknownst to him, Hannah secretly watches this transformation. Claudia is back in her office, with her dog Gretchen by her side, when Alexander seeks employment under the guise of being a friend of Regina. Claudia rejects his request, but Alexander remains determined. At home, Regina discovers a strand of hair in her brush, prompting her reflection. The story shifts to the bunker, where Helga and Noah labor on a mysterious apparatus, revealed to be a failed time machine. Helga questions the purpose of their actions, and Noah cryptically speaks of pain, chaos, and the absence of a divine plan. He then shares a sinister vision of harnessing this energy to alter the world's fate. Meanwhile, Hannah, in possession of Alexander's original passport and a gun, retrieves them from a hidden location. Charlotte listens to a voicemail from Ulrich, who reveals that it's not a matter of who kidnapped the boys but when. Helga's involvement in 1986 is confirmed. Katerina urgently seeks Ulrich's whereabouts, unaware of his location. Katerina confronts Charlotte about her husband, Ulrich's whereabouts. Charlotte reveals that she suspended Ulrich from duty so he could spend time with the family. However, Katerina suspects he's with Hannah and storms out, clearly frustrated. Meanwhile, in an intimate moment, Franziska and Magnus share a kiss in bed. Their affection is disrupted when Franziska mentions she has to leave. Magnus surprises her with a bird necklace he found under a bridge, but she guards her secrets, telling him she's not ready to open up. After Franziska leaves, Magnus joins Martha on the couch. Martha has been trying to reach Jonas, who is ignoring her calls. When Martha questions why everyone keeps so many secrets, Magnus responds with a cryptic, "Some things are just private." Katerina's quest for answers leads her to forcefully enter Hannah's house. Accusations fly as she interrogates Hannah about Ulrich's whereabouts. Hannah, a master manipulator, tells lies about ending her affair with Ulrich and tries to comfort Katerina, revealing her lack of shame. Elsewhere, Bartos receives a shocking visit from his grandmother, Claudia, who everyone believed to be dead. She confesses to her mistakes and the desire to change the past, handing Bartos a photograph of their happier times before the tragic summer. Hannah, on the other hand, tries to strike a deal with Alexander, asking him to destroy Ulrich's life, without specifying how. Jonas returns home in the pouring rain and is confronted by Martha, who wants to discuss their recent makeout session. Jonas coldly tells her that they are not a good match, leaving Martha feeling confused and used. They share a kiss as the rain intensifies, leaving us with questions about the chemistry between them. In a world filled with mysteries and secrets, Jonas and Martha find themselves grappling with the complexity of their relationship. Despite Martha's persistent questions about whether it's wrong for them to be together, Jonas apologizes and withdraws, leaving her pondering the uncertainty of their connection. Meanwhile, the Nielsen-Canwald family is in dire need of revealing the truth to Katerina and Martha. The burden of secrecy weighs heavily, and the family must realize that their common sense, intellect, and emotions are essential. Perhaps, a confrontation between 2019 Katerina and 1953 Egon could offer a unique solution. In another part of Vinden, Alexander reaches out to Torben Waller to dig through police records for any information that could be used against Ulrich Nielsen. Their conversation also touches on the mysterious truck and the barrels stored in the cave. Alexander appears fatigued and anxious as his life spirals out of control. Regina, during her cleaning duties at the hotel, enters the stranger's room for the first time. There, she discovers the peculiar research he has been conducting, involving missing boys, ancient symbols, physics, and astronomy. Now, the question arises, what should she do with this information? Should she suspect him of being a murderer? Should she contact the police, Claudia, Charlotte, or even Alexander? In the darkness of night, Bartos meets with Noah on their customary secluded road. Bartos is compelled to admit that Noah's predictions have come true. Noah, in turn, inquires whether Bartos has contemplated his offer, leaving us with a sense of impending decisions. Back in 1986, Claudia enlists Alexander to weld the metal door to the cave shut, where the barrels are stored. In 2019, Benny services a trucker, and later confronts a hooded figure in the rain. When the figure remains unresponsive, Benny resorts to insults and retreats to her trailer. Unbeknownst to her, the hooded figure is none other than the stranger, who proceeds to break into a nearby truck containing radioactive barrels. His actions are shrouded in mystery as he opens one of the barrels. Finally, in 1953, the clockmaker crafts a new battery pack for Ulrich's phone, but Claudia's arrival with blueprints for a time machine leaves him bewildered. Claudia declares that it's a machine that will utterly reshape the course of time. In the thrilling finale of Dark Season 1, titled Alpha and Omega, the show comes full circle with the revelation that the town of Vinden is ensnared in a mysterious time loop. This episode heavily incorporates Gnostic and Hermetic symbolism to deepen the narrative. Noah is portrayed as the demiurge, a character reminiscent of the Old Testament God, benefiting from his control over the town, which is trapped in this temporal anomaly. On the other side, Claudia embodies Sophia, wisdom, or the Holy Spirit, forming a trinity along with the clockmaker and the stranger. Claudia becomes a formidable foe to both Noah and Bartos. Speaking of Bartos, he grows closer to Martha and Noah, which pushes Jonas onto a familiar path he's trodden before. Just like Ulrich and Jonas, Helga attempts to unravel the mysteries of the universe and set things right. The episode also delves into the complex personal lives of the characters. On the night of Mikkel's disappearance, Peter contemplates breaking his promise of fidelity to Charlotte as he watches Benny from afar in a parking lot. It's unclear if Peter is infatuated with Benny specifically or if she represents something Charlotte can't provide. The presence of photographic evidence suggests a deeper connection between Benny and Peter. Peter later drives to a cabin and engages in a self-destructive ritual, reciting the Serenity Prayer used by addicts in 12-step programs. During this ritual, a rift opens in the bunker wall, revealing Mads' lifeless body. It's interpreted as a warning from a divine force for Peter to come clean with Charlotte. In a state of panic, Peter attempts CPR on Mads before calling Tronte for help. As they both grapple with fear and grief, an aged version of Claudia appears, composed and in control, promising to explain everything but urging them to take Mads' body to the place where it should be found before time runs out. The episode also shifts to November 12, 2019, the day of Helga's accident. Jonas awakens with a young Mikkel in his bed, a surreal experience that leaves him bewildered. Jonas sits up to take a pill but decides to toss it away, seeking clarity and distinguishing between dreams and reality. Martha, now dressed in blue instead of her usual red, confesses the truth to Bartos about her involvement with Jonas and attributes her erratic behavior to the disappearance of Mikkel. Surprisingly, Bartos forgives her, both agreeing that it's all Jonas' fault. Martha, cunning as ever, spins the narrative so she appears to have rejected Jonas, making her more valuable in Bartos's eyes. Bartos's desire for Martha stems from his wish to steal her away from Jonas, unaware that Jonas had never revealed Martha's attempts to contact him. The situation echoes the complex relationships of Hannah, Ulrich, and Katerina, but in this cycle, the counterparts of Hannah and Ulrich are together. A nurse escorts Charlotte to Helga's room at the nursing home, informing her that Helga has been absent longer than usual. Charlotte inquires about Ulrich, but the nurse discloses that he suspects Helga's involvement in the dead boys' cases. Helga awakens in the Watchtower in 1986. In 2019, Jonas confronts Ines about her knowledge of Mikkel's origin from the future. Ines admits she knew but initially dismissed it as a child's overactive imagination. She didn't foresee Mikkel's tragic fate. Jonas vents his frustration, detailing the tangled family connections and the havoc they've caused. Ines responds with a philosophical outlook, suggesting that events, however strange or abnormal, happen for a reason, and humanity should not play God. She emphasizes the importance of living in the present and the uncertainty of the future. Jonas, desperate for things to return to normal, yearns for a world where the complexities of time and relationships are less daunting. In 1986, Mikkel, a young boy, impresses Ines with a magic trick, drawing a parallel to his dream of performing magic like Houdini. He moves a sugar cube from one cup to another, but when Ines asks if his dream is like Houdini's, Mikkel reveals that his true desire is to just wake up. Ines shares a philosophical paradox about identity with him, comparing it to the dream of a butterfly. Mikkel ponders the idea that he might be both a person and a butterfly before creating an enigmatic smile that fades into heartbreak. In 2019, Ines recalls this conversation as she tries to comfort Jonas, who feels out of place in time. She relates it to a time-related paradox but struggles to ease Jonas's discomfort, similar to her inability to make it okay for Mikkel in 1986. In 1953, Ulrich's mugshot is taken after his arrest, and Egon, a local police officer, tries to get information from him. Ulrich, in a self-destructive state, quotes lyrics from an 80s song. Egon suspects him of being a Satanist, but Ulrich reveals he's a cop and insists he was trying to save the boys. Ulrich tells Egon that Helga is still alive and begs to be set free to change the future. Egon refuses, and as they drag Ulrich to a cell, he makes a hurtful remark about Egon's impending divorce from Doris. Meanwhile, in 2019, Jonas heads to school in the rain wearing a yellow raincoat. Bartos confronts him for missing a meeting with Noah and for kissing Martha. Despite Bartos's earlier support when Jonas was in a mental health facility, he accuses Jonas of being a liar and shoves him to the ground, leading to a fistfight between the two friends. In the midst of an altercation between Jonas and Bartos, Martha rushes outside to intervene, assuming that Jonas started the fight. Bartos orders Jonas to leave and never return to the school, anticipating that their parents will conspire to have Jonas expelled. Suspicion grows that Noah orchestrated this entire encounter. Jonas walks away, and the stranger enters the clock shop where Tannhaus reveals two time machines, explaining that they are the same device but in different states. The older one now functions using an electromagnetic pulse from Ulrich's phone, a capability Tannhaus was unaware of when he designed the original. The stranger inserts cesium-137 into an unknown chamber, causing Tannhaus to explain that it generates a Higgs field, increasing the cesium's mass and creating an electromagnetic pulse capable of imploding and creating a black hole, much like what occurred during the nuclear power plant incident. The stranger questions why Tannhaus decided to help him, and Tannhaus reluctantly mentions that it felt like the right thing to do, a part of the time loop mechanics. Charlotte inquires about the year Helga was kidnapped as a child, and Peter attempts to discuss something important with her, but she remains focused on the year, realizing that it was 66 years ago. In 1986, Helga encounters his 2019 self and is urged not to assist Noah, as the older Helga believes Noah is evil. 1986 Helga speeds away in his car. Jonas packs a bag and calmly bids farewell to his mother, Hannah, hinting that he left something back at school. As he leaves, Hannah is left puzzled, hoping it's a time travel goodbye, not a final one. Tronte and Peter discuss time anomalies in the bunker. Tronte has faith in Claudia's predictions, while Peter wonders about the torn pages in the book and what will transpire tomorrow. Tronte believes that everything will be new as time resets. In 1986, Helga questions Noah about belief in God, and Noah shares a poignant story of a stranger who rented a room in their home and imparted wisdom about the value of every experience, even pain. He believes that challenges and sadness shape who we are and should not be in vain. Noah then mentions that Jonas Canwald is next on his list. As Noah speaks about Jonas, Jonas is shown entering the caves in 2019 and emerging in 1986. Meanwhile, other characters like Katerina, Martha, Hannah, Egon, and H.G. Tannhaus are shown in various situations, connected by the intricate web of time and events. In 1986, Ines takes the caseworker to Mikkel's room to move him to temporary housing. However, Mikkel remains unresponsive, seated with his back to the door. Ines confides in the caseworker, expressing her desire to adopt Mikkel and become his foster mother until the adoption process is complete. Despite the caseworker's attempts to explain the complexities of the situation, Ines is unwavering in her determination. She has a stable and secure life, making her a suitable candidate for adoption, and she refuses to be dissuaded from her pursuit. Meanwhile, teenage Charlotte finds herself in the woods, drawing a scientific diagram of a deceased bird. Jonas approaches her, inquiring about the date and year, which she reveals to be November 12, 1986. Charlotte questions why Jonas is in town since he is clearly a stranger. Jonas cryptically mentions that he is bringing someone back from the dead, to which Charlotte wonders if he can do the same for the birds. Jonas explains that his ability only works when they are younger, before they die, but Charlotte notes that in that case, the birds wouldn't be dead. Jonas responds by emphasizing that this wouldn't change the fact that they would eventually die. The significance lies in the parallel between the birds and Mikkel. Jonas cannot alter their fates any more than he can change the birds' destinies. He is yet to fully comprehend the reasons behind this limitation. This conversation will gain importance when Charlotte recalls it in 2019, hinting at the symbolic significance of birds in the series Dark. In 2019, Charlotte examines old newspapers from 1953, seeking information about Helga's attack. She discovers a photo of Ulrich with an article labeling him as a suspect in Helga's murder, setting the stage for further revelations and mysteries in the unfolding narrative. Charlotte, burdened by the bizarre evidence she's amassed, finds herself at a tipping point. Meanwhile, Daniel Canwald, Egon, and some of Vinden's law enforcement converge on Ulrich's cell, offering him one last chance to reveal Helga's whereabouts. Ulrich, resolute in his silence, faces a brutal assault from the officers wielding their billy clubs. On another front, Jonas arrives at Mikkel's hospital room, where the young boy is asleep, watched over by Father Noah engrossed in a book. Jonas inquires about Noah's identity, but Noah signals for silence, just as Helga ambushes him from behind, rendering Jonas unconscious with chloroform. Jonas awakens in a grim location, the kill room, wearing an expression that likely mirrors the shock and fear of those watching his predicament. The stranger stands just outside the door and assures Jonas there's nothing to fear. Jonas remains skeptical. The stranger reveals that Noah is the one who placed him in the room and explains that the ominous-looking chair is a prototype time machine intended for testing on Jonas. The stranger elaborates further, revealing his identity as Jonas Canwald from the future. Jonas recoils at the notion that he will eventually transform into this grizzled figure willing to imprison a child with a torture device. The stranger discloses that he has already lived through these events, albeit from a different perspective. He emphasizes the lack of true free will, asserting that individuals are trapped in repetitive cycles. Jonas implores the stranger to change his actions, starting with releasing him. The stranger, however, clarifies that altering his past is impossible because it would jeopardize his mission to destroy the black hole. He points out that deep-seated desires control people's actions and hinder free will. Jonas, overwhelmed and disturbed by the conversation, pleads for an end to the chaos and the return of Mikkel. The stranger reveals that, even 33 years in the future, his motivations and desires remain the same. He expresses remorse and shuts the peephole door. In 1986, Helga drives his car through a rainstorm, tunes into the radio, and waits at a red light, highlighting desire. However, as the light turns green, a collision with another vehicle, which doesn't slow down, occurs, signifying imminent danger. In the midst of the intricate time travel web in the small town of Vinden, strange and unsettling events are unfolding. Helge, his head bloody from a car accident, stumbles out of his vehicle to discover a shocking sight, the lifeless body of his 2019 self. This Helge from the future had attempted to eliminate his 1986 self to prevent any further collaboration with the enigmatic Noah. Meanwhile, Charlotte, the town's detective, stumbles upon a newspaper article regarding the accident dated November 13, 1986, though the incident had occurred on the 12th. Curiously, Charlotte adds this article to her murder board before receiving a message from Peter, urging her to visit the cabin. Noah, an enigmatic figure deeply involved in the town's time travel machinations, ominously tells Bartos that a critical moment is approaching. His foreboding words send shivers down Bartos's spine, as he begins to suspect that Noah may be more of a villain than an ally. Stranger Jonas, determined to put an end to the time travel paradox, embarks on a mission to destroy a black hole. However, he soon realizes that his actions will also trigger the very creation of the black hole he seeks to eliminate. The mysterious element cesium within the clockmaker's time machine is at the center of this paradox. In a chilling monologue, Noah reveals his perspective on the ongoing battle over time travel. He believes that most people are mere pawns in a larger cosmic game between light and shadow. Noah asserts that they belong to the light and must ensure that the time loop continues as it has, regardless of the sacrifices required. Noah warns Bartos never to trust Claudia, even though she is Bartos's grandmother. He claims that Jonas will discover he's a puppet in Claudia's hands and that she belongs to the shadow. Despite the darkness in their actions, Noah believes they are ultimately working for the greater good, aiming to free humanity from its pain and immaturity. With determination, Bartos agrees to proceed, and Noah declares that it's time to act. Stranger Jonas activates the time machine and settles into wait, joined by the bloodied adult version of Michael, whom Jonas has encountered sporadically. In the midst of these time travel complexities, Ines brings Mikkel, formerly Michael, back home. Charlotte meets Peter in a bunker, and Katerina tries to reach Ulrich. In 1953, Ulrich is found with a bleeding head. The town witnesses strange phenomena like flickering lights and a shaking ground across all 3 time periods. Meanwhile, Agnes and Doris share a secretive moment as the cable goes out in 2019, affecting Franziska and Magnus. Regina and Alexander are also perplexed as they encounter a mysterious black dome in the sky, and it raises questions about what Regina might have witnessed on the night Mads disappeared. In the small town of Vinden, an unsettling atmosphere fills the air as the residents grow anxious. Deep in the woods, a heavily armed Claudia watches with a sense of satisfaction as either snow or ash drifts through the air. It seems that something has gone awry at the power plant in her respective time period, and she is determined to ensure that events unfold as they should. Meanwhile, in the bunker, Jonas resides in 1986 while Helge is trapped in 1953. A peculiar rift in spacetime materializes, allowing them to reach out to each other. When their fingers make contact, an extraordinary phenomenon occurs. Helge is suddenly transported to the torture chamber in 1986, his surroundings mirroring those at the start of episode 7. Jonas awakens, realizing that he's trapped in a never-ending nightmare. He's confined within the bunker, surrounded by Claudia's murder board and an assortment of weaponry. Desperate to escape, Jonas manages to break free. As he emerges from the bunker, he finds that the once thick forest has thinned, and the air is filled with falling snow or ash. His surroundings bear the scars of a war zone, complete with abandoned vehicles and ominous radiation warning signs. As Jonas ventures further into this unsettling future landscape, A truck carrying a group of masked individuals comes to a halt before him. They order him to raise his hands and kneel on the ground, refusing to answer any of his questions. Gazing up at a passing hovercraft, a woman utters the chilling words, "Welcome to the future." With that, she knocks Jonas unconscious. And with that, Season 1 of Dark concludes.